So during the last decade, we have seen women become increasingly involved in the wrestling business. Gone are the days of bra and panty matches and women barking on all fours. Instead, we currently have a female Impact World Champion. In 2018, WWE held the first Women's Evolution pay-per-view, and AEW has recently created AEW Heels. Chief Branding Officer Brandy Rose announced the creation of AEW Heels just before the company's Double or Nothing pay-per-view in May 2020. If I'm going to just go by person, if you could introduce yourself. So if we start with Lauren.
Right. My name's Lauren May. That's my first and last name. Sometimes I've gotten asked if that's just my first name, but I'm 22 and I am from Kearney, Nebraska. So right in the middle of the U.S. And yeah, I'm currently a college student studying advertising and public relations and graphic design and all that jazz. So
thank you. Benny?
I'm Benedetta Grazzini, but you just can call me Benny, like everyone does. I'm Italian. I'm from La Spezia, Italy, which is a little town in northwest of Italy. I don't know if you know Cinque Terre. It's close to Cinque Terre. And I'm a singer, actress, and musical performer. And I've been a wrestling fan since I was a little girl. That's it.
Thank you. I'm really gonna. Is it Tomika?
Tamika, but you are close.
Okay, I will try.
It's no problem. And Doug, I heard a lot of words. So I'm Tamika King. Basically, first name Tamika, last name King. First, originally I'm from. I was born in Evanston, raised in Des Plaines, Illinois. Each of which being about 30 minutes to downtown Chicago. Currently, however, I'm here in Houston, Texas. I'm actually a line cook at a new hotel at the Medical Center in Houston, but at the moment because of the COVID-19, I'm currently at home until I'm brought back in. Been watching wrestling myself since I was in my years. Currently, I'm 34 years old. Been watching. I got started with WWE, watching it since my first wrestler since Triple H versus Cactus Jack, and been in love with wrestling ever since.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
Hi. I'm Claire Waring. I'm from Warsaw in England, which is just outside Birmingham. I'm 33 and I am a stay-at-home mom to my 2 little babies. Yeah. That's me.
Thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, hey, Maggie Joy. I am 37 and I live in Annapolis, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. on the East Coast in the States, originally from New York. And I am a product manager for a software that deals with contingent labor and the workforce.
Thank you. Violet?
Hi, everyone. I'm Violet. I'm currently in Louisville, Kentucky, but I've moved all up and down from Florida to New York. The eastern seaboard of the United States. Currently, I am an operations manager for a coding school that teaches low-income people to be software engineers so that we can give them better careers and better lives for themselves and their families. And I've been a wrestling fan I started in high school, which is around the time that the Attitude Era started to fizzle out in WWE. Definitely during not so much fizzle out. I don't know. It's hard to say. And the WCW, WWE wars were totally going on. I was such a dork. I was like, yeah, WWE's everything and WCW's bum. And maybe in retrospect, that wasn't quite the truth. And then things got, I don't know, boring. I think the apex of that fandom for me was when Stephanie McMahon almost married Triple H on TV on Monday Night Raw, and I had to book the TV room in advance to tell everyone to leave me alone. because I had to watch that. And then, like, I don't know, I just got boring. And then AEW is kind of like reignited that passion for me. So, yeah.
Thank you. Another one I'm trying. Is it Shauna?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, everyone, they either overpronounce the "aw" in it or underpronounce it, and I just let it go. But it was actually, it's perfect. My name is Shauna Reardon. I'm originally from Long Island. I now live in Melbourne, Florida, which is about an hour south of Disney.
My dad lives in Melbourne.
Nice.
Yeah, I like Oak Alley and Aurora. Anyway, sorry to derail.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I know that area very well. I used to actually work. I say used to because I'm currently still on unemployment. I don't know if I'm going back to the job I was at before. I hope not, because I didn't like it. So there's that. I've been a wrestling fan since, I'm just going to say since I was born, because my dad used to be a part of it. He was a manager for a couple different things. The Samoan Gangsters used to work for him. So I knew Rosie. My dad likes to say that he knew Roman Reigns when he was a small fry running around the house. I've met a whole bunch of the guys because I was toddling around backstage because I was left to my own devices. There was one small time when I was not really, I was still a fan, but I wasn't actively watching because the house I was in, we weren't allowed to, but I still kept up with it with a couple of my other friends that liked it. But then I got into it after I graduated high school, and it's been kind of in my life ever since. But NXT has been what kept me with WWE, but now it's more AEW and Impact for me as of late.
Thank you. Haley?
Kaylee? Me?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. Hi, Kaylee. I'm 24. I'm from Topeka, Kansas. So also wherever Nebraska lady went, I'm not too familiar because I'm like smack dab in the middle of the country. Let's see, I do a lot of things. So I am an advocate for the mentally and developmentally disabled at Kansas Neurological Institute. I also travel around and perform as a singer, dancer, actress at various Renaissance festivals. So if you go to those, you may have seen me. And I also just recently, at the beginning of this year before COVID happened, started training at Extreme Wrestling Center. So I'm learning to wrestle myself. I'm really excited. And I'm a relatively new wrestling fan. I've probably been in for about 4 years watching. I started with New Japan. Weird place to start. And I kind of just like migrated over with AEW when that happened.
Thank you. Angelina?
Hi, I'm Angelina. I live in Phoenix, Arizona right now. Well, a suburb thereof, but Phoenix, close enough. I'm originally from the dead center of New York State. So if New York State is Snoopy's head and Long Island is his collar, I grew up in his eye. It's the easiest way for me to describe where I'm from. And growing up there, I started watching wrestling with my grandpa and my uncle and never stopped. I used to go to the Utica Auditorium to see live shows with my uncle all the time. And then when he passed away, I kind of stopped watching wrestling for a while. So I missed the entirety of the Attitude Era. So that was the time where I was just out of it completely. Got back into it after I got married and was unemployed for a while and was like, man, I'm really bored. Like, let me see what's on TV. And I was flipping through and I saw a John Cena match. And I was like, wait a minute. That's the guy, because I went to the same college he did. And I remember distinctly my senior year, they told me to go photograph something because I worked for the school newspaper. And I see this guy, and in my head, I'm like, that's a grown-ass man with a WWE championship belt walking around the middle of campus. What the heck is going on? And then the next year I was like, oh, right, he was the champion. He wasn't just delusional walking around campus with a championship. So I missed a good chunk, but I went to the same school John Cena did and got to meet him when I was in college, having no clue as to who he was, which was a very surreal experience. But now I mostly watch AEW, and I have a 5-year-old who made a cameo appearance earlier, asking why I wouldn't let Daddy look in the bag that we brought home, and I had to remind him that it was his Father's Day gift, and that's why we're not looking in the bag. But I'll try to stay on mute, so if he pops in, you don't hear him.
Thank you. And Alexis?
Hi. I am a customer service representative for a call center who handles leave of absence and disability claims. I live in Illinois. I'm northwest of the city by about an hour. And at night I work at Home Depot, though not currently because of the virus, so I'm kind of enjoying not being there. And I've been a fan on and off most of my life. I distinctly remember seeing Hulk Hogan as a very small child. Like, I was probably 5 years old. I couldn't tell you who he was fighting. I just remember I liked Hulk Hogan. In retrospect, shouldn't admit that. And I watched again when I was in middle school with my brother and my sister and their friends and spouses, and that was like a big to-do for us every Monday. As I'd run home in middle school, finish my homework, and then run the 5 blocks to my sister's apartment to go watch. And we stopped when I was in high school, about the year 2000, because our family had a major tragedy, and we all kind of drifted apart and stopped doing the things like that anymore. We didn't get together very much. I rejoined watching wrestling early last year. And it was Dean Ambrose who actually got me back into it because I thought he was hilarious. I rejoined just in time for his heel turn. So I was like, well, that's unfortunate. But since then we got AEW and we have all these options and access to indie wrestling. So I've been focusing more on AEW and the indie scene and really enjoying interacting with different fans, which I didn't have that option when I was growing up, since there was really no internet or very little internet. So the accessibility was very low.
Thank you. I'll just tell you about me for a minute. Well, I'm born in 98, so I missed the whole of the Attitude Era. So I completely bypassed that. And I came in with the era where everyone hates it. And I think it was great because I was like a child. So I was brought up with Punk and the Hardy Boys and Dudleys, and then going to Shield era. But I'm also into the very unpopular stage of Impact, well, TNA, when you had AJ Styles having weird relationships with random women who were writers, and all them terrible storylines that I just loved because that was my introduction to wrestling. And now, because I've been writing since the COVID started, I get to do a lot of New Japan, Ring of Honor, Major League Wrestling. So I get to do more indie stuff, but I mainly write AEW stories. That's sort of where this is coming from, because of AEW Heels was sort of the inspiration to have you all here today to talk to you all. So hopefully this is going to go really well and there'll be no problems and I won't mess up any words, but we're just seeing. So question 1, we sort of started to cover this, but I wanted to know, how did you start watching wrestling and when did it really become your passion? So if we start with Lauren.
Yeah. So I was born in 98, so I didn't watch like any of the Attitude Era because I was like I didn't exist. But ever since I can remember, my family's watched wrestling, and my parents watched it when they first got together and when they were first married and then when they had us. So when I was growing up, it was around like when Lita and Edge and all of them, that was the peak. And then moving into like John Cena and all that ruthless aggression era type stuff. And we would sit and watch religiously, like every Monday, back when they had like the Sunday night heat at the tail end of that, main event, superstars, like all that. I would watch it every day, every show that WWE had, and I really grew up watching that. And then I was a huge John Cena fan, and I remember going to a show in Omaha, like I think it was a Raw taping when he was United States champion, and I really stuck with that. And then when Cena kind of started to taper off, I kind of just got disinterested as I got older. Like, I would watch, but then I'm like, oh, this is kind of stupid, and why are you doing that? And I'd get really mad because I had this weird habit of whoever I liked was the person that like immediately got their push dropped for no reason. And I had a string of those experiences. I was like, no, wait, I really want that guy. And then it's like, no, they got to go away. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, I really wanted that guy to get the belt, but it didn't work out. And so I kind of got disinterested with that because I always saw the storyline potential or like the match that I wanted to see, and it just never, ever worked out. And then around high school, I kind of started watching like more infrequently, and then kind of just would watch sporadically, and I'd take like 3 to 6 months off, and that's when Brock Lesnar was like having his whole heyday. And up until like very recently, I didn't know about the indies because like I don't know if we have any promotions in Nebraska, but I didn't really know that existed because I grew up on WWE. And so there was a point in time like a few years ago where I just didn't watch at all. And then I remember one morning, like very random, my family ended up finding New Japan on Axis at like 10 in the morning. And we all sat down, and it was a marathon, and we had no clue what was going on, but we just like sat and watched it for the entire day. And then of course I ended up like just jumping right back into it because I'm like, this is insane. This is like crazier than anything I've ever seen before, because I just watched WWE growing up. And I was like, I've got to keep watching this. And then I found the Bullet Club, and then I just really delved into that, like full on just dove in. And then once I found out that AEW was becoming a thing, I just gravitated to that. And now it's like completely changed where I like don't watch any WWE, and I'm trying to get more in the indies and watching all that. And yeah, that's kind of how I started watching wrestling.
The Bullet Club has so much to answer for with the way wrestling is now.
I love it.
Insane how much they have defected the whole of the wrestling, especially indie scene. Benny.
Well, it's a little different here because in Italy we don't have the culture of pro wrestling. I mean, it's a very small community. Anyways, the first thing that got me into wrestling was actually the anime Tiger Mask, who inspired the Tiger Mask from NJPW. And my brother used to watch it, and I just got along, But I started watching wrestling by myself in the early 2000s. I think it was 2004, 2005. On national television here in Italy, we had 1 hour show, and it was half an hour was Velocity, and the other half an hour was SmackDown. So it was just a little thing about wrestling. It was just WWE, but one thing that I remember is that I fell in love with Chris Benoit at the time. He was my favorite. And unfortunately, after what happened, the tragedy that involved Chris Benoit and his family, pro wrestling was canceled from national TV here. So I had no more ways to watch it until later in the years. Anyways, one thing that I remember is that I watched for the first time a match of Jon Moxley on Velocity while he was wrestling the M&M. He was a jobber. It was a squash match, but I remember seeing him, and years after, I saw him in CZW, and I thought, God, I saw this guy. I don't know why. I don't know where. And then I saw some videos on YouTube of him wrestling Eminem, and I linked the things. And years after, I saw the Shield, and oh my God, here's that guy again. And I was very involved with the Shield until the very end, until Dean Ambrose left and John Moxley came back. Thank God. Anyways, during the years, it was very hard for me to find something wrestling related because, as I said before, the wrestling community here is very small. And I didn't have the internet for the first years, so until 2008, I think. So it was pretty hard for me. But eventually I went back and learned more about the things that happened in the past. And in 2016, I found out about the cleaner. Didn't know who he was until I went on YouTube and found out Kenny Omega, and then started watching NJPW and Bullet Club and The Elite, and that brought me to AW, and that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sure, every single time I ask you.
That's not a problem.
Tell me again.
Okay, got it. Mine might be considered. Mine might be considered a little on the weird side when it comes to my passion in wrestling, but mine kind of started, well, since I was born in 1985, I did, like I said, I haven't really, my first time of watching it was really around the time of getting closer to Mick Foley's, aka Cactus Jack's, was supposed to be his final match against Triple H, which resulted in Hell in a Cell. Thing about that is because I'm the only wrestling fan that's in my family, and I was very young at the time, and not to mention we had no computer. Obviously back in the day there was no social media, there was no, I had no computer, so there was no way for me to watch it, and we didn't have any money, so that there was no way for me to watch it, the pay-per-view. So the way that how we used to watch it is like, you know how back in the day on TV it would show or make noise, but it'd be like fuzzy. That's kind of like how I would watch it. So I would keep up that way, but I had to rely solely on the commentators, mostly Jim Ross especially, and Jerry King Lawler. And once he was gone, it was I had to listen to Paul Heyman, JR, in addition to Michael Cole and Taz. So I had to do it through there. But after the match between the Cactus Jack and Triple H, I just kept following from doing it like that. Even go so far as recording them with recording the Raw and SmackDown on my VCR back in the day as well. Since I knew nothing about computers, since again I really didn't have a computer until when I went to college. In fact, I even kept up throughout the Ruthless Aggression, where my main favorite would be John Cena as well. Kept up all throughout until I guess I started to get a little dissatisfied with that after the Chris Benoit tragedy. So since then I kept going back and forth when it came to wrestling. Back then, even with the computer, I still knew nothing about the independent wrestling. I did, however, at one point try to watch Impact on at one point, but especially when Taz, I noticed that Taz was on there one time doing commentary. I would always concentrate on them, but for whatever reason, it didn't hold my interest that much. And I didn't, and to the point where I would stop watching up until the time where the Shield came in, especially, which brought me back, and kept watching it until once again the Shield left, and from there I would watch different types of things, but on WWE, but it got to the point it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and the people like with the things that's happening on there, they would get push, but then again, they would get buried. And it kept happening too many times to the point where I just had to stop watching. And that was when one of my coworkers had introduced me to Kenny Omega at one point. First, I was like, I had to ask who that person was, and then they pretty much told me what match to look up on YouTube. Well, once I saw that, I was instantly hooked on that. And once I heard the AEW was getting started, I just hitched my wagon and went on the AEW and just kept watching ever since, and just brought my love back to where I'm basically watching AEW and just checking out a little bit in the indies like Progress and ROH.
Thank you. Claire?
So I was born in 86, and I've got an old brother. So he was always into it. So I was 90s wrestling fan. Bushwhackers, Hulk Hogan, British Bulldog especially, obviously, because there weren't many British wrestlers that were like famous then. So for us, that was pretty amazing, having a British wrestler up there with WWE. And I kind of carried on watching it then until I was in my teenage years. Hardy Boys, Lita, huge fan of China, absolutely adored China. And then when I got a little bit older, I stopped watching it for a bit until about 6 or 7 years ago. And then started watching it again then. And that's when everything sort of, I started finding more indie things, which is great over here. I didn't realise that England had Britain had such a diverse collection of indie wrestling companies. Been to a couple of indie shows. That it was WCPW, but they've stopped now, which is a shame because they were really good shows. Yeah, I'd mostly watch WWE for all my faults. But I do like AEW, but we're not quite up to date with it at the minute, so we're a bit behind with that. But we try and keep on top of checking in on all of the big ones like Impact, New Japan. We check in and see for all of them, really, which is ace. But I really like the British wrestling scene at the moment. I really like NXT UK. Really, really like it. I really like that they're getting a push. Yeah.
My local one is IPW. I don't know if you've had IPW up there yet. They try to travel.
No, I don't think we've got that here.
They're pretty good because they sometimes will get AEW wrestlers. They had Havoc. Then another show they had Joey Ryan and Jordan Devlin. So it's like proper British, like the beginning guys, and then they bring in some big guys to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, there's some really cool ones around here that are like Pete Dunne and Mustache Mountain. They're really involved. I live around by where Mustache Mountain are from. We're from the same area, which is quite cool.
I have 30 minutes up the road is Will Ospreay and B. Priestley.
Nice.
And then Havoc is from like 10 minutes away. That's where Jimmy Havoc's from. Maggie?
So I started watching when I was a kid. So me and my best friend were really into it. We used to like beg our parents to let us do sleepovers on Sunday nights for the pay-per-views so that we could stay up. And then I think I sort of fell away in, towards like high school age, just kind of sort of grew out of it. And then when I went to college, I knew my husband all 4 years, but we started dating towards the end of our senior year, and he was like really big into it, like still. So it's sort of like just via being around him, got into it. When we graduated, we both like moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, but we were consultants. So we were on the road 100% of the time. So we used to watch Monday Night Raw and like talk about it and like whatnot. So that was like the one thing we could do together while we were on the road. So I sort of got back into it through that. And then I don't know really what it was per se that I sort of either just got too busy or whatever. It kind of, again, sort of faded away until about 2017 when WWE did the Mae Young Classic, like the original one or whatever. And that piqued my interest, right? I was super interested in it and I started watching it. And then I think from there sparked, you know, where are all these ladies from, the different promotions that they were involved in and things like that. And then, of course, my husband started like branching out and, you know, just wrestling is always on in my house now. So around, you know, like 2018, I'd say is like when I really got into New Japan, Ring of Honor. I'm from Annapolis, which is close to Baltimore where Ring of Honor is. So Ring of Honor and our local indie is MCW, Maryland Championship Wrestling, which is a feeder for Ring of Honor as well. And they also have like Leo Rush and Velveteen Dream. So they get like a lot of people that come back. So we started going to those shows. And then of course, like All In and NXT UK and those things. So I'm always like less interested. I watch Monday Night Raw and SmackDown because my husband has a website as well. So it's kind of for the job, but I really prefer AEW and like NXT UK and NXT in general, obviously AEW New Japan. So yeah, that's where I am.
Thank you. Violet?
Sure. So like wrestling and I have a long history. I don't think I mentioned my age earlier, but I'm 37. So I've been around long enough to see like several different iterations of it. And I kind of like remember watching it as a kid and then like I didn't get like super like have to watch it all the time until like Stone Cold and The Rock. Like I wanted to be Stone Cold and I think that's part of like my queer story too, but that's another story for another day. But like I wanted to be him. Like I remember asking my parents for a pickup truck. Like what the hell in reference? Like and like, what was I thinking? I don't know, but he was like everything to me. And yeah, so I started like I said, watching it a lot and then just kind of the storylines got dumb and like I moved on to other things. But I'm really into it again now and really desire to like be a part of a community now. I just recently moved to Louisville and Louisville is home to Ohio Valley Wrestling, which used to be a huge feeder for the WWE until it was bought by I think Al Snow. And now it's not so much a developmental program for WWE because of NXT. But for reference, if anyone doesn't know Ohio Valley, it's basically where John Cena was trained. So, and a lot of other people, because during that time they were huge. They were basically the developmental program for WWE. But as soon as everything starts opening back up here in Kentucky, I really want to go out and be a ref. I was official for roller derby for a really long time, so I'm used to dealing with like the fringes, I guess you can say, in alternative sports. And yeah, so right now I pay most attention to AEW. I'm trying to watch more Stardom and Women of Wrestling when I can find it on Access, but because they're very hard to find their shows on the internet, and that's a real bummer. But Amazon Prime has basically what's Glow. They just have to call it something different. So I've been watching that too because I really want to really support more women or non-binary or trans wrestlers. And not to say that they're there, but you know, that's important to me. But anyways, I forgot what my point was, but there you go.
Thank you. Shauna?
So I know when I said earlier that I've been a wrestling fan since I was basically born because of my dad being involved in everything. After he stopped because of whatever reasons, I still kind of kept on it when I would go to my grandmother's house because after my parents got divorced, mother was like, no, this is not a thing that's happening. So it was basically on the weekends when I would be able to go to my grandmother's house. So it was mainly SmackDown at first. So that was the go-to program for us. And then as I got older and I started spending more time there, it was Raw and SmackDown. And then I found out about Florida, what was at one time Florida Championship Wrestling, which then became NXT, which was awesome because at one point I was supposed to go to one of the shows down here in Melbourne when I was on spring or one of the winter breaks from up on Long Island. We were supposed to come down here, and Edge was one of the big names that they had for like a special meet and greet, which was going to be really cool, except we got snowed in, so I couldn't fly down for that. That was probably the biggest disappointment of being a wrestling fan, the potential meeting of Edge. Still not over that, and it's been like 15 years. But as I got closer to graduating high school, I got more into wrestling again. Definitely in love with the Hardys. Jeff Hardy is still the love of my life. I will say that till the day I die. I will forever be a fan of CM Punk. I don't care what anybody has to say about him. And then I kind of drifted a little bit when I found out about New Japan through social media, mainly everybody retweeting the Young Bucks because they're just hilarious all the way around. So then I found them, and then that led to Bullet Club, and then that drifted a little bit. And then, of course, when Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish made their debut on NXT, that took me back in there because I was like, I know the name Adam Cole, but why can't I place it? So then I researched him, and I was like, oh, that's right. So then here comes Bullet Club again. So it's not really a big surprise that I am now more AEW than WWE because the Bullet Club will always have my heart, especially the original Bullet Club. The only part of WWE that I really watched lately, especially because of recent events on SmackDown, very recent events on SmackDown, I only make a point to watch NXT. So it's mainly just NXT, Ring of Honor, for sure AEW. Like now I make sure to watch AEW live so I can live tweet instead of watching the recorded later on. Like everything else is everything is recorded, but AEW is the go-to for sure because it's, in my opinion, the supreme between the two. Definitely better than the OG company. They're not king anymore. Sorry.
And the woman wearing the most amazing Kenny Omega shirt, Kaylee.
Hi guys. Okay, so growing up, I mean, I did see matches here and there because I had friends really into wrestling, but I just didn't like it. I really didn't. I'm going to be honest. I was one of those it's fake people for the longest time. And if I could go back in time and punch myself in the head, I probably would, for many reasons included. But I went to my best friend's house. He was watching wrestling. It was the Shibata versus Okada match. Y'all know the one. And I remember watching that and I was like, oh, these guys mean business. I like that. And so I started going over regularly to watch New Japan with him. And I thought it was cool, but I still didn't really get it. I just didn't get it until watching, I don't even remember the exact match. I just know it was Kenny Omega and Adam Cole were in a tag against I don't know who. But I remember watching Kenny and I was like, yo, he's like a really good performer. I get that. As a performer, he's like speaking wrestling in a language that I understand. So that's when I started like, I have to watch this every week. We're going to meet up. This is the day, Wednesday, after work, everybody at the house, we're going to watch it. And I started watching New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that was it. That's all I ever watched was New Japan. And I was hardcore into the Bullet Club. And I remember the announcement for All In happening. And I was like, oh, we're going to go. So we bought tickets, hopped a train, and we went. It was probably one of the greatest events that I've ever gotten to be at before. I didn't expect it to be so, I don't even know what words to use. Like, it was honestly really indescribable. I cried when Kenny Omega's music came on and he started walking down. So that was cool. Some lady actually came up and was like, can you sign this release form? I took film of that. I'd like to use it. I'm like, oh, thanks. So I've jumped ship from New Japan. Like, I still kind of keep up with it, but not as much, to AEW, because all of the people that I followed, the people that made wrestling so much more interesting for me and did it in a way that I could wrap my head around and kind of understand what was happening, they all went to AEW. So that's how I got here. Now I want to wrestle myself because it's a performance art and I think it's amazing.
Thank you. Angela? Why did I just say that wrong? It's Angelina. Oh,
Angelina. It's like Brad Pitt's ex-wife with a smaller bank account. Only difference between the two of us, I swear.
so many names. I'm really sorry.
No worries. So I was really into wrestling as a kid, watching it with my grandpa and my uncle, and going to live shows was the thing that like really got me excited. Like, I was cool watching it, on our, probably illegal cable box where we got the pay-per-views that came off the back of like some cousin's truck. That was fun, but being there in person, like, that was so much more for me. And then I kind of got out of it when my uncle passed away because there was no one to take me to shows anymore, because my parents definitely banned wrestling in our house because for some reason, because I put my sister in a sharpshooter too many times, I guess, or something. I don't know. She probably deserved it. But I got back into it after I started watching it on TV again after college and after I was married. And I did live in a town where I could have gone at the time to shows, but my husband has an anxiety disorder, so he wouldn't have been able to come with me and handle the situation. And I wasn't comfortable enough going to shows by myself as a woman, because I was like, I know what this crowd is like, and I, by myself there, am just not comfortable. So I just didn't go for the longest time. I ended up working at a radio station and doing promotions, so you were always with a partner, and they had me work one of those shows just at a promotional table out front, and then we got to bring some listeners to a meet and greet and meet Kofi Kingston, so that was really cool. So that was my first time at a show in years, and like, it got the spark back in me, but I didn't have anyone to go with, and I moved here to Arizona, and another colleague of mine who I had worked with for a while but hadn't actually met until he moved to Arizona as well, and we sat next to each other. He was really into wrestling, and he's single and by himself out here, and he's like, I want to go to shows, but going by myself seems like not as fun. I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't go by myself. We're friends. Like, my husband trusts you. I trust you. Let's go to shows together. So we started going to shows together with Elimination Chamber when it was out here in Phoenix. And it was at that show that there was a guy sitting next to me that kind of creeped me out. So my friend and I devised hand signals wherein, like, I always sit to his right so that I can, because I wear a wedding ring, he doesn't. I can grab his left hand, obscuring the fact that he isn't wearing a corresponding ring. Then we go to the concourse. I tell him, like, what's going down, and then we'll switch seats when we get back if need be, or, talk to security to get us another seat. Just because sometimes I don't feel comfortable around some of the creepy dudes at wrestling shows. We actually had to use it when we went to an NXT show because the guy next to me was getting like a little bit too close. But he is a bodybuilder type person. So once he, puts his arm around the back of my chair, solves the problems. I think the passion really came back for me when we went to the Royal Rumble. He got us floor seats. I like to say the seats were so expensive we took the chairs home, because we did. And that's when it really came back to me, because Royal Rumble has always been my favorite pay-per-view, and just seeing a women's Rumble really, like, I was crying the whole women's Rumble, and my friend was looking at me like, I knew you were going to be emotional, but I was not expecting to have to deal with a crying woman that I'm not even romantically attached to for 4 hours. This is not what I signed up for, but, you know, he handled it like a champ. So, and him and I were actually going to go with his girlfriend to Double or Nothing in Vegas this year. That was the plan. And then that didn't happen. So, but for us now, like, it's AEW, because the Bullet Club pulled us over there from New Japan. Chris Jericho, for me, pulled me into New Japan, and the Bullet Club kept me there, and then I just followed them. And I'll probably follow them wherever they go, if they were ever to leave AEW.
Thank you. Alexis?
So I did mention I was watching in middle school. What I failed to mention is that was from 98 to 2000, so like the height of the Attitude Era. I feel like, so, you know, your top guys were Stone Cold and The Rock, and my brother was probably the biggest person that got me into wrestling. I'm 8 years younger than him, so significantly smaller at the time. So he would quote unquote choke slam me on the bed, and never anything that would hurt me. He just liked having a smaller sibling he could literally throw. But I thought it was fantastic. I was so happy to be a part of it, and it was, in retrospect, probably terrifying for anybody else to have seen him do, but it was so much fun for me. And like I said, AEW was kind of in their, also at the height of the Monday Night Wars with WCW as well. So we would, depending on what the matches were, sometimes we watched, or not AEW, WWE. So sometimes we watched WWE, sometimes we watched WCW, and like pay-per-views were like our Super Bowl. So everybody get together, bring food, chip in for the pay-per-view, and just kind of make a party out of it. And he actually, so I love her brother, but he's a jerk. So there's a little bit of a jerk's part to the story. He pulled me out of school in 8th grade. I asked him what was going on, and he said that our dog got hit by a car. So I immediately started crying, but actually what he was doing was he was taking me to go meet Macho Man Randy Savage. And he didn't think I was going to cry. He thought I'd know that there's no way the dog got out of the house, but I was 13, so not quite smart enough yet. And he was like, I don't remember telling you that. And I said, yeah, I'd block that out too if it was that awful. And actually, since I've kind of revived my love for wrestling recently, it was starting because I started trying to lose weight. And so I don't know where that intersection happened, but I was looking at Something Fitness. It's like, I wonder what wrestling's like. It's been a good 20 years since the last time I watched, and started watching like some compilation videos and seeing how, you know, there's actually representation for women, not as just bra and panty matches and arm candy, but they're actually participating properly. And that was something I severely lacked outside of Lita, really, when I was watching. Nobody went very hard like they do now, and weren't treated as respectfully as they are in some of the promotions. Not all of them, but most of them now have not only like the representation of women being able to hold their own, but they're also different shapes, different types. You know, you don't have to be the skinny blonde woman to be the title holder, and they are savage on the mic without having to tear into each other on a personal level. That's just bullying. So that's actually why I've gravitated a lot more towards AEW, because, you know, with Nyla being on the title holder, they could have gone there, and they've chosen to not address that part of it as a storyline. It's just that Nyla is Nyla, and that's exactly what it is, and there's nothing that we're going to say about it. And to not only put somebody who is LGBT in the title, but also to not use it as a part of the story is amazing. And as for the indies, I'm lucky being in Chicago. We do have a pretty good indie scene. So we have Warrior Wrestling, which is pretty much in Indiana, but we also have Freelance and AAW. And they still get like the AEW names and some of the bigger names. Chris Statlander wrestles for Freelance. And but it's introduced me to a lot more wrestlers like Danhausen and Warhorse. And so it's just kind of nice to be able to expand that love. And then also my boyfriend when he found out that I started watching wrestling again, he was like, "You watch wrestling?" It's like, "Yeah, I haven't done that in a while. Is it weird?" And he goes, "No, this is awesome." And he's jumped in both feet with me. And like, he's been my wrestling buddy for the majority of the last year and a half. And absolutely feeds into my fandoms. So for Christmas, he got me the Mox hoodie that I wanted, and we're going to go on the Jericho cruise as our first vacation in a few years now. So it's nice to be able to have somebody to share that with. But I do still go to shows by myself, and most of the time it's not a big deal. Like I thankfully don't encounter the creepy people that Angelina has run into, but I did end up with a delightful old man at Warrior Wrestling who's been living down the street from there, never gone, and he's like, "I don't know why I didn't come. This is awesome." So sitting front row with him was great.
Thank you. Question 2. What sentence or stereotype does not represent the female wrestling fan? Lauren?
I guess like for me, just being a fan, like the perception that like women can't be wrestling fans is kind of the stereotype that I've been hit with the most. Just like I've been sitting in a room with people I've known for years and they're like, "Oh, you watch wrestling? Why do you watch that garbage? And like, why do you follow that?" I'm like, I can be a woman and be interested in wrestling and not just be like, "Oh, it's because XYZ person's hot," or that type of thing. Like I, for the most part, just the stereotype of like, it's a guy's thing or it's chauvinistic, really like the stereotype that was laid out by the start of the ruthless aggression era of WWE, where it's very like sexist or that kind of thing. I think that's the stereotype that I've experienced the most, that I've had to personally combat. And I think that like, that's also one of the bigger ones for women, is just like, why do you watch that? And kind of just trying to get away from, it's not just bra and panty matches or the like lack of representation, that because that was the most popular thing when like, especially being a younger woman, where they like that's when you kind of grew up like watching was John Cena, because that's still like the most notable name people know. And they're like, "Oh, well, you watched John Cena, but you also watched like Edge and Lita," and that's like what has stuck in people's heads. Or the Mickey James Trish Stratus, where it's not the best scenario or representation, and you kind of have to like kick that out of their head and be like, "No, actually we have a very diverse field now, and it's really awesome, and you all should watch it." And like trying to just get them to understand like it's not just WWE Ruthless Aggression era anymore. It's so much more. And it's okay for women to like sports and do things that aren't like typically feminine. Like I think that's the biggest stereotype, at least for me, that I've experienced, is just like the fact that you can like a sport and like wrestling and be into that, and it's not just a guy's thing.
Thank you. Benny?
Yeah, it's the same for me. I mean, I've always been told that I'm a tomboy, that I'm not feminine, just because I like wrestling and combat sports in general, you know. And it's not right, you know, because I'm a woman, and the fact that I love wrestling doesn't make me less feminine. at least I don't feel like I'm less feminine. I feel like a strong woman, and I'm proud of who I am and what I like. That's it. And yes, there is this stereotype that if you're a girl and you like wrestling, you are a tomboy, you're a lesbian, or you want to be a porn star because of Lita and Edge, because of Mickey James, Trish Stratus, and things like that. You guys think that you want to become a porn star because of that. Thank God, with women's evolution, things are starting to change. But that's the main stereotype that I have to face every single time. And guys here always see me like an easy hookup, because there's a lack of women in our community. So when they find a girl that likes wrestling and talks about wrestling, they think that I'm just there to be a hookup, which is not true, because I just want to talk about wrestling because it's something that I like and something that I know really good, really well, sorry. So that's it.
Thank you. I'm so
Yeah.
scared of offending you. I'm so sorry.
Hey, that's something. Like I said, I'm good. It's like I said, I hear
I've had a really bad stamina all my life, and it's the last three sounds. I can't speak in sounds, so I'm really trying.
Or Mika, if you like.
Mika?
Yeah, if you want to do that.
I can do that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. But like I said, I hear words. But anyway, it's like I always agree with the stereotypes I keep hearing, like it's a guy's thing, or it's like, okay, just because we like it, it's like, okay, I always face two things, like what do you know about wrestling? Every time I try talking about it, it's like I would always get a surprised look, like, wait a minute, you know wrestling? Or I get even worse because of all the stuff from the social media with with being known as ring rats. Like, okay, I just that I like wrestling doesn't mean I'm instantly looking at wrestling because I want the package of a guy and I want to hook up with them. That's just something I'm to this day I'm just getting sick and tired, and the fact that I see that on things like social media and the fact of what's been going on with, say, with the whole Matt Hardy, the Lita, and the Edge. Then there was the one with that I see, especially on social media, when with people being in a relationship. It's like, okay, it's not even about that to me. It's about I always enjoy wrestling based on what they do, like what happens in the ring. Personal to me, personal life and inequality shouldn't have nothing to do with it. But it's like something I always face from how because it's a quote unquote man sport. I have no right. To me, it's like to them, I shouldn't be talking about that. And if I'm talking about it, if I like it, it's either because I'm a nerd, or I'm just or we're basically ring rats. And that's just something that, to me, I just hope it'll just change.
Thank you. Claire?
The same kind of thing. People going, oh, you only want to watch it because you want to see men in trunks. No. I'm happily married. I just enjoy watching it. I like watching the women. I like watching the men. I like the athleticism. I'm not athletic in the slightest. I like watching other people be athletic. That's it. So it's just entertainment. It's good stories most of the time. I really like getting into the stories, and I know it's not real, and you still get into it, and I love it. It's great. It's like a soap opera, but with wrestling. It's great. You can't beat it.
Thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, I think I would echo. I think it's either, oh, you're just along for the ride because your husband's into it. Like if I was to go to a show with somebody else or to go on my own, like, what are you doing kind of thing. Or just to watch the guys, obviously, is another thing I hear a lot. The other thing I've heard that's kind of irritating is also like, oh, you're only watching because you watch like Total Bellas or some of that nonsense, right? And I don't watch it, but like, hey, people may like it, but it's like, oh, you're just here as an extension of those shows, not for the actual matches or like the storylines that are within the products and stuff like that. So I think those are the things that I typically see that don't represent like a female fan.
Thank you. Violet?
I think it's a lot of the same too. It's like, I feel like there's not a lot of street cred in being a wrestling fan like there is with like baseball, football, hockey. And like I get a lot of slack because I'm a big football fan, and not only am I a football fan, I'm like a huge Miami Dolphins fan, which comes with like its own shit. Because Miami Dolphins suck, basically. So, because I know this is going to go out to an international audience, so they lose a lot, but I love them anyways. But yeah, so like I'm used to just kind of being beat up on because of my sports preferences, and I've always been like I've always loved watching just people do like feats of strength, like watching strongman and strongwoman on TV on ESPN is just amazing to watch. I loved American Gladiators. What's that new show with The Rock called Titan or something? I was watching that the other night and just like that these people can do these things that I just cannot do. And but it always felt like it always just like felt like, oh, you're a dork, you like wrestling, or oh, you only do because the guy that you're dating at the time likes you're just like a mark for him more than anything. And it's like, no, like I am an independent person with my own point of view and my own likes and dislikes, and I'm doing this because like I want to. And like when I first started, like I earlier mentioned with I love the stupid love story between Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. Like it appealed to my high school heart for some reason. I think it's because on days off I was also watching Days of Our Lives with my mom, and it was a way that we were able to connect. So it's just like it's so silly in retrospect, but yeah, it's just like that, you go to indie shows. Like when I was living in New York, I would go to Creative Pro shows. Creative Pro trained Chris Statlander. Creative Pro did MJF. Met Orange Cassidy at a Creative Pro show. It was one of the best nights of my recent life. And like people just like, I don't know, like wrestling fans are dorks. Like whatever, I'm a dork. I'll love y'all. But yeah, it's just that stereotype, like people just kind of like laughing at you because you show up at the team meeting wearing like a wrestling t-shirt. I have so many of them. It's just
Even in the UK, the Dolphins are loved. They're the best, worst American football around. We all love them.
My next door neighbour's the Dolphins fan.
We love the Dolphins.
I'm a Panthers fan.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
As long as I'm very conflicted because I lived in Jacksonville for a long time, so I feel like I should be a Jaguars fan. And I feel like I have to be a Jaguars fan now that AEW is like so intimately like entwined with the Jaguars organization. But I hate Jacksonville and I hate the Jaguars. And like that I went to college in Jacksonville, and that they're filming AEW in Jacksonville right now. Like SCU put out a shirt, the worst town I've ever been to, in Jaguars colors, and it came out. Bought it. Like, I hate you, Jacksonville, and I hate you, Jaguars. So this was the worst town I've ever been in. So
I can kind of sympathize. Somebody asked if I watch other sports, and I said I live in Chicago. There's only so much disappointment I can actively put in my own life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Up in New York
I
in the
can relate.
any
90s,
Chicago
my parents were
team
Bills fans.
is inviting further disappointment. So let's minimize the best we can.
Yeah. My mom was a
I
big
agree.
Bills fan in the 90s, Buffalo Bills in New York. So we went to so many Super Bowl parties where she was so hyped. And then we walked out of so many Super Bowl parties where she was so pissed. So, like, I've never seen disappointment like I did. Like, the third one was the worst. By the fourth one, she was, like, expecting it to be terrible. Like, she was expecting that something was going to happen. And then, so the end of that one wasn't too bad. But, yeah, just tons of disappointment. Tons.
Thank you.
And even she hates the Dolphins.
No, you can't hate the Dolphins. Come on.
If you're from New York and you hate the Dolphins, I'll give you some credit because there's nothing worse in the world than a Jets fan. That being said, the XFL has and always will be terrible.
I think that the pandemic only happened to prove that the XFL should not have come back.
And I don't like Vince McMahon to start with, so like it failed. Like made my hater heart happy.
Before we get completely sidetracked onto football, Shauna, would you like to answer the question?
My turn?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's basically just repeating everything that everyone else has said so far. But more with the, oh, you're only watching it because he does. It was more of like, because of my dad. Like, oh, well, he used to be in it, so that's why you watch it. No, I actually like it more than he does, and I know more about the business than he thinks he does. So you're wrong. Sorry, try again. I do also hear the ring rat a lot, and I'm just like, have you seen me? Like, that's not a thing. And there are also the creepy guys that go to some of the shows, but after I expressed my deep, undying love for death matches and watching people leave the ring drenched in their own blood and partially some of their opponent's blood, they leave me alone. But the ring rat is what really, really irritates me, especially since like there could be a girl at a show that she just got out of work and she has to dress now. She didn't have time to go home and change before she goes to the show. And it's like, well, you're just coming to the show dressed like that because you want them to notice you from the back of the arena. Like, do you have a brain? And we're always just supposed to be there because we're with somebody else that likes it, and we can't have our own opinion of what happens during the shows. Like, I've had one guy come up to me while I was standing in line at an NXT show waiting for the meet and greet to start, and he's like, oh, is this your first show? And I was like, no, I've been here before. And I knew immediately where this conversation was going to go because it's where most of them go. And he's like, oh, well, because it was on NXT, so they're like, oh, well, is Alexa Bliss your favorite? I was like, I like Lexi, but Rhea Ripley can probably rip your heart out, literally through your chest and pull it out in her hand. So that's my girl because she don't give a shit. She doesn't care, and they're like, they still didn't take the hint that I wasn't some dummy, that I knew my stuff, and they're like, oh, well, and they try to come up with some weird thing, and they're like, well, she does this as her finisher. I was like, no, it's the Riptide, but okay, you tell yourself that. And then there are other guys that are just there, and they're like, oh, well, I know this wrestler personally. I can get a meeting with them if you want me to. I was like, no, because that's going to come with a payment that I am not giving you. Most of the time, it's a female is at a wrestling show because they want to end up sleeping with somebody. Why is that always the first thing that pops into anybody's head when you're there? I'm there to see people beat the shit out of each other. And for the storylines, because those are pretty funny too. But it's mainly the violence for my vicious little heart.
Thank you. Kaylee?
I hate the term ring rat with a burning passion. I have heard it so many times. The first time being at All In, because that was the first big wrestling event I had ever gone to. And I remember a guy kind of questioning me in line for merch, and he was like, "Oh, let me guess, your favorite wrestler's John Cena. Where's your boyfriend at? Who'd you come here with?" And I was like, I brought my friends. My favorite wrestler is Kenny Omega, hence my shirt. And I was just, it's just frustrating that it's assumed that a woman can't enjoy a masculine form of entertainment without some sort of motive other than my own enjoyment. I like watching people get thrown on the ground. I find it very entertaining. It is fun. I'm small, I'm stressy, and I'm aggressy. I love it. That's my, ring rat makes me so mad. I also went to Dynamite in Kansas City back in February with my two best friends. They're engaged. They went as, they did a whole Young Bucks get up. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm gonna do Kenny Omega. And I picked his trunks from when he won the G1 Climax. And I hand painted a pair of leather pants to look just like them. And I was so excited about my outfit that I put together, and I was so excited to wear it because we were ringside. I was like, this is gonna be awesome. We can do the whole pose thing. It's gonna be so much fun. Immediately get called out on looking too, for lack of better words, slutty, apparently, because I had on really tight pants and I had on a tank top. God forbid, my shoulders. So sorry I distracted you. And I was so hurt. My feelings were seriously so hurt because I spent hours on that outfit just for some guy to immediately shut it down when I got there. He was like, oh, you just want attention. No, I want to look like Kenny Omega, damn it. Yep, I just hate that we either are assumed to be wanting attention from either the wrestlers themselves, from male fans. It's always the males that they assume that we want the attention from too, and I don't understand. Maybe I want a lady to look at me. Lady compliments are nice.
I'd compliment you.
Thanks. So I just wish that it was more understood that women can enjoy whatever we damn well please.
That's the dream.
Right.
Hopefully we are making small steps with this, with heels, with girl power from NWA. Hopefully we'll get there. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you all and try and get just a little bit more, so because no one ever asks a fan what they're feeling. They especially don't ask women fans what they're feeling and how they feel about these comments. So I wanted you to have that moment to tell everyone and just basically say screw it to everyone who doesn't understand that. So carrying on with Angelina.
The thing that I hear, that I get most often when I say I'm a wrestling fan, it's either, oh, you just want to see Randy Orton in his little, get up, which, don't get me wrong, it looks fantastic, but that's not what I'm there for. Or a lot of the, oh, so you say you like Chris Jericho, well, what about his match on this episode of this Monday Night Raw on this date? Do you remember exactly what happened and how, no, this isn't a quiz, this isn't trivia night. I can just say that I like the person based on what I've seen. I don't need to know the whole history of everything. And I don't need to prove to you that I know the history of everything, even if I do know it. I can like it just because I like it. There's no, litmus test. There's no like multiple choice. There's no, like, I don't need to prove to you that I like it. Just take me at face value and say, I really like Chris Jericho. Okay, you really like Chris Jericho. Cool. That's it. You don't need to. And I never see a male fan get that same reaction where, like, if my husband were to say, like, I love Kenny Omega, they'd be like, oh, that's so cool, dude. Not like, oh, run down all of his matches for me and prove to me that you like it. And, like, I even see that in sports, too, like in football. Like, oh, you say that you're a Broncos fan. Like, well, what happened in – no, I don't know what happened in that game. I wasn't born. I don't give a crap. Like, I didn't see it. I don't care. I like them for right now. That's that. So that's what I like. I don't like the tests, and I don't like the, oh, you only like it because you want to look at these pretty people. Like, yes, they are beautiful people doing athletic things. Does it make it more enjoyable? Yes. Would I like it even if they weren't beautiful? Absolutely, because I'm there not for their bodies, because they are more than their bodies. And I feel like that not only devalues us, but devalues them as well. Like, the only way that a woman could possibly like this is because the people are beautiful, and that's just not okay.
Thank you. Alexis?
I feel like it's going to be mirroring a lot of what others have said. There is the whole aspect of only liking it because my boyfriend likes it, only liking it because I want somebody's attention, in which I'm like, yeah, other fans to talk about fan stuff. I don't want romantic attention. And I've also been gatekeeped. I cosplayed Moxley at StarCast 3, but just before All Out. And I had a guy come up and he goes, oh, who are you dressed as? Like, there wasn't a giant MOX on my back. And I was like, John Moxley? And I had blood on my face because it was just a last-minute decision and it made sense to me. And he goes, oh, is he known for bleeding? And I said, well, he's originally a deathmatch wrestler, so yeah. And I'd never been gatekeep before. And I'm with a group of other cosplayers, and I asked my friend who was dressed as Kenny Omega, I asked him, I was like, was that gatekeeping? And I just didn't recognize it? And he goes, oh no, that was gatekeeping. That guy's an asshole. But the other side of it is that there's always this expectation that when, as a female fan, I'm faced with any sort of adversity, I need to like run to the nearest man to help me out. And they're like, oh, well, why didn't your boyfriend step in? I said, because I didn't ask for his help and he knows better. If I want his help, I'll tell him that I'm having a problem. Until then, he trusts me to be able to handle myself. And that's completely fine because I did. It's just, there's still that level of the women need to be some sort of damsel reliant on men in any fashion, in any aspect of wrestling, even from the wrestler standpoint, is just very tired. And it's 2020 and we don't need to carry 1990 energy with us all the way to 2020.
Heard that.
Thank you. The next two questions are probably going to be the longest answers, and then they go back to sort of like quicker answers. If anyone has a time problem, let me know. So question 3. Has being a woman affected how you are perceived as a wrestling fan? I know we've touched on this in little bits, but if you have any examples, that would be amazing. Well, amazing in a sort of really horrible sexist way, but if you can share them, so thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, first, Kaylee, I was at that same Dynamite on the floor. I was by the stage, like 4 rows back from the corner of the ramp. That was behind the boys' corner.
Behind which corner?
Okay, so when they did the tag match with the Jurassic Express, their corner. I was like right behind their corner.
Yeah, I was in the second row right behind the bell.
Oh, we were like literally separated by the ramp.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. No, to get back to like the question, I really think that being a woman has affected how I'm perceived as a wrestling fan, because and a sports fan in general, because I keep it pretty hidden that I'm a wrestling fan just because I don't feel like catching crap around here, because I know that it's as much as it sucks. Like, it's a guy's thing around here. Like, it's just perceived as weird still. And we have a lot of other sports going on, like Husker football, which goes back to the disappointment section. So it's not as big of a thing as it probably would be seen as here, and the popularity definitely tapered off. But even in like my age, like I'm a big hockey fan, and so I've caught the ring rat thing outside of being a wrestling fan. I've been called the hockey term is a puck slut, just for being interested and getting quizzed, and like I've experienced that in another sport. So it's definitely, I think that's the application, is just that's how women sports fans are treated all across the board. Because I've had experiences with hockey that sound very similar to what people have experienced with wrestling here. But I used to work for our local hockey team, and this is probably my best experience with getting like any sort of shit, because I got point blank, and mind you, like to set up a little bit of context, our staff was probably 10 people, and I am by far the most experienced with the team, because I've been a fan, same kind of thing, since I was like 2, and I knew like the history and all that. And I was one of 3 girls in the office, and they were discussing UFC, like not even really wrestling. And then they were talking about The Undertaker, and somebody's like, oh, well, I wonder how big is The Undertaker? I'm like, he's 6'10", 6'7", somewhere around there. He's tall. And I pulled out whatever the right answer was, and then they Googled it, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm like, yeah. And then I get looked at, and I just hear from one of my coworkers, I didn't know you were into that type of stuff. I'm like, is it not blatantly obvious? I watch hockey and I like fights. Of course I'm going to be into wrestling and UFC. I like the violence. I like that aspect of the athleticism. And just to be like checked like that, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, why would I not know about that, especially working in the sports field? Like, it's a sport. And that was one of the like more defining moments of like, wow, you're just like not supposed to be into this. I'm like, I definitely can tell you, I know, and I'm not trying to be like an asshole or anything, but I'm like, I can definitely tell you I know more about wrestling and the landscape than you do sitting here talking about the Packers and the Panthers and like stupid other mainstream sports, like trying to act like they know something. And then the other experience I had was with another woman, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but I was sitting in a meeting, and I had like a AEW tweet pop up on my Twitter, and I had it open because the meeting was really boring. And I got checked, and she's like, why do you like that? And I'm like, cause I can, cause I don't know, we're literally sitting in a political club. I'm like, I'm not going to pull this out, but like, because it's America and I have the freedom of expression and choice, didn't think I was going to have to pull that out here. But also just because I'm a wrestling fan and I like it. And I really like got offended because she's like, oh, my ex-boyfriend was into that shit. And she was like, he was into New Japan and AEW, and that's all stupid shit. And I was like, first of all, not my problem that he is your ex-boyfriend. But beside the point, not my problem that that's your experience with it. Like, I can like this, and it's perfectly okay. And then come to find out, like, to me, this is the only community I've ever been able to find, like, a girl gang in with the invention of heels and, like, actually knowing, like, hey, it's okay to be a fan. Because even in hockey, I've had to either make, like, the connection with other people and bring them more into it to be a fan. And like the interest was there in sports, and then they got exposed and they wanted to be a fan. But I've had to make that connection and make the fan myself and spread the word, And so to find other people that are involved with it is really like enlightening, and just it's so nice that for once I'm not feeling like there's some other total awful, like I don't have to feel like closeted about my wrestling passion anymore. Like it's totally okay to be a girl into sports, into wrestling, and you know, you're not going to get called those stereotypes. And but yeah, those are my experiences. I hope that made sense.
That made so much sense. Thank you. Benny?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I mean, it's all fault of the stereotypes, you know, it's what we said before. But thank God, recently I started to been seeking to find someone who took me seriously, and it's the AEW Italian podcast, which is a group of guys. I'm the only girl there who talk about AEW. And I joined the group on Telegram and started listening to the podcast. And I found my happy place there because they actually listen to me and, and they treat me like an equal, which is so good. Finally, thank God. And eventually I became an editor for a podcast, and I'm responsible for news, and I also have a weekly column called Big Trigger. And yeah, I mean, of course, being a female wrestling fan, especially here in Italy, is very, very hard. For what I said before, you know, you're a tomboy, you're a ring rat, or whatever. But I finally found someone who understands me. And even if I'm the only girl in that group, it's great because they treat me like an equal, and it's okay. It's good. And now with AEW Heels and all this beautiful projects that are starting, I feel like I found my happy place for real. I mean, I finally found someone who share my interest, my hobbies, my passions, and it's great. I mean, other females who I can talk to with about wrestling, it's amazing for me. I mean, I've never had a chance to talk about wrestling with other females, so it's great. I'm happy.
Thank you. Mika?
Yeah, same with me, but because thing I could definitely say that me being a female was bad influence, because it would go back to going and being in high school. I would always get looked at weird every time I would notice. I'd never noticed any of the females clearly watching wrestling, but the guys would talk about no problem. But whenever I would say something like what I like, what I saw on Raw, SmackDown, explain what I like and dislike, they look like, wait, you actually like that stuff? Like, yeah, and then I get quizzed all of a sudden every time that says like, okay, hey, you guys weren't quizzing each other when you were talking just now, so now just because I don't have the same thing as you guys do, that I have to be quizzed. It's like, it just, to me, it just gets tiring, and even to the point, why I'm always I'm always thankful with AEW and the fact that that they made the AEW heels, because for the first time I'm able to talk to other females. I don't that loves wrestling as much as I do, without all the testing or anything like of that as well. I always feel like too, it also because I don't have many people in the family that loves wrestling. A couple of people that probably loves wrestling are again, they're guys. There's literally no girls. That I'm literally the only female there that actually loves wrestling. So it can get a little lonely. And even during events, I usually go on my own. Like, I was supposed to have gone to AEW in Davie in Houston, but with COVID-19, obviously it got rescheduled. But most of the time, if I would have to go somewhere, I would literally have to drag like say my mom, for instance, and she doesn't follow wrestling at all, to the point that she would always jokingly say like, oh, I'm not gonna say that they say that F word, but the all that F stuff, let's say, but to me, it's just a thrill to meet other ladies like you ladies that I can speak to about wrestling, right, quite frank as well. So and actually that makes sense, just as opposed to if I would talk to the guys, I would just constantly get tested. Just to the point, it gets so tiring.
Thank you. Claire?
So the only 2 shows I've ever been to were both with my husband, and I was pregnant at both of them, visibly pregnant. So I think I was probably given a bit of an easier ride. People were generally a lot nicer to the big pregnant lady sitting there. But I've had comments off people before, like when I was at high school and stuff. I was a bit of a weirdo anyway, so it didn't really, it wasn't really anything too different for me. I was an absolute grebo, as they called me back in high school. So for them, it was just something else to take the mick out of me about, and it is what it is. But I'm generally quite lucky now that my husband's into it and our friend is also into it, and they don't treat me like some random woman. They treat me like they're equal, and they involve me in everything. We've got like a WhatsApp group, and we all talk about everything and to do with wrestling, which is cool. And then there's I'm in a group on Facebook that's got loads of women in for everything. But there's quite a few wrestling fans in there that I've been able to connect with, which is really amazing, because you don't come across many women without social media, really, if you don't get to go to many shows. And yeah, I think I've been quite lucky because I haven't been to as many shows. You just get the odd comment, which is, I don't care what people think about me for liking wrestling. I genuinely, I don't care. If they want to judge me over it, it says more about them than it does me. So.
Thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, I think there's sort of 2 things. One is like, I think being family and friends. So my husband took a leave of absence starting in December from his job to start this wrestling website. And so he reviews almost all of the promotions. And a lot of people in family or friends or stuff like that are always like, why aren't you tired of it? Like, don't you get sick of watching it? It's like, no, actually, like last Saturday while he was working, I sat down and watched WoW back to back, like the whole season, right? Like, so yeah, I'm into it just as much as he is, right? He just happens to have a much better like writing and creative mind and be able to take the time often to do this venture, right? I think the second thing though is being a female is, you go to a show and there's always some, pardon my French, but some asshole in the crowd who's gotta say some dumb shit. And I have a pretty hot temper and I don't like to like deal with that, right? And whether it's regarded at me or anyone else, like I'm not gonna sit there. So, a specific example is like we went to Ring of Honor's Free Enterprise in late last year, whenever it was. And I was in the front row and there's like these guys like 2 rows behind us, and they made some comment. I don't even remember who the wrestler was, but some comment about this guy came out with a mustache. It was like, that looks like you look like a tranny or some shit like that. And I just like turned around. I was like, what the fuck? Like what? And I think being a female, like I didn't have a problem turning around and being like, that's wrong. Like a lot of people, like a lot of male people, like they may like think about it, but they're not going to like stand up and say something because they don't want to ruffle feathers or, like if the guys are bigger, get into a fight or something like that. Whereas like, I think about that second sort of, but I do see that like happen a lot where it's like, there's always some idiot and like no one wants to say anything or be like, check the guy, And I just think for us, we have like, I just see women generally, fans have lower tolerance for that shit. And they're more willing to like say something or drop something, you know, like drop a hint to those people. So I think that's one thing as being like a female fan that I've seen quite a bit. Like my husband even gets a little bit like, just relax. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to relax. Like, this is kind of like ridiculous, you know? I'm obviously not going to like go out of my way to be completely like a jerk or anything like that. But you know, if someone says something like that, I'm going to turn around and like, you know, kind of make it a point that, hey, that's not cool. Like, this isn't the place for that shit, right? There is no place for it, but don't do that shit here either. So that's just like one particular example that I have around that.
I think women fans are generally, like you said, a lot more less tolerant. I'm a big soccer fan, or football to me and Claire, and whenever there's like female referees, you'll hear the "get your tits out" chants, and you get all them comments, and it's never like, whenever I go with my dad or anyone or my husband, they sort of just sit there like really uneasy, and then I'm the one that turns around and starts absolutely ripping into them, and it's like the shock on their face that you actually speak up. So no, be quiet and sit down now, please.
Because like heaven forbid a woman uses a voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Violet?
I think like, you know, it's the whole just dudes being dudes in general. Like, I don't want to say that men are trash, but shoe fits, wear it. But like, one of the things I'm really into right now, and I will say that like my current boyfriend kind of got me back into this, is that we collect action figures. So like over here on my windowsill, I've got Lince Dorado, Nikki Bella, and Kairi Sane like staring at me as I'm talking. And John Cena's the Ghostbusters over there underneath the TV. And we have so many action figures or wrestling figures, and like we've already pre-ordered the AEW thing, and the Ringside Collectibles have already pre-ordered the little bit of the bubbly set, which if you haven't seen, like, you need to go see because it's friggin' amazing. And it's like when I go to like Target, and I found Walgreens is a really great place to find things. In particular, like, I'll spend a whole Saturday out with my son sometimes just trying to find action figures, and like everyone's like always assuming that I'm buying them for my son, and I'm like, no, these are my toys, not his. And my son's like couldn't give a shit about the wrestling figures. He's like, wait, they have Legos, let me get those instead. So it's like, even with something as asinine as a toy, you know, these people still give you problems, you know? So, I don't know. We'll go into Target, and I head straight for the WWE toys. He heads straight for, like, Thomas and Legos. So, that it's like, it's so weird how that attitude is even pervasive when it comes to just inanimate objects. But, like, I don't tolerate it. Like, I get really angry. I had to stop following a bunch of, like, AEW pages and stuff on Facebook because of the treatment of Nyla Rose by so many of the Neckbeard fans that it just really, really, really angered me. So, like, I don't even pay attention to AEW much on social media, which is unfortunate because they have brilliant social media outside. So I, like, try to pay attention to YouTube and stuff. But, yeah.
Thank you. Shauna?
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Violet was saying with the toys, I haven't had any experience with the toys because I just order them all online because I don't really like going into stores all that much. But there have been times when my grandmother and I would go to Target, because who doesn't just randomly walk into Target? I make a beeline for the trading cards because for some reason the Target that's like 5 minutes from my house is the only one in my area of Florida that still has the Topps WWE trading cards. So I'll go over there and I'll be looking for the boxes of them, not the little not just the individual packs, because I'll spend just as much money getting the individual packs, so I might as well just get 2 boxes of them. And I'll be standing there looking for them, and a guy will be over there looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and the Magic cards and the Pokemon cards. And they're usually like around my age, like late 20s, early 30s. So they're not that young either that it's socially acceptable for them to be looking at trading cards. And I'll be finally grabbing my WWE cards, getting ready to leave, and they'll be like, oh, are you buying them for your little brother or your son? What? Nah, fam, these are mine. Ain't nobody else touching these cards except for me. Listen, I mean, like, I have, like, how everyone puts their base, or everyone who collects cards, they put them in those protective sleeves in the binders. I have an entire binder. I actually have to buy a new binder because I have several boxes of them that are, everything is put back into the boxes. They're just chilling in my closet waiting for me to get my act together and get a new binder for them. But it's like, why would you say that? If it was another guy standing there, they wouldn't say that to them. They'd be like, oh, cool, who's your favorite? They wouldn't say, oh, are you getting them for somebody else? Like, I'm allowed to watch. I'm allowed to enjoy. I probably like it more than you do. So why? And they probably don't even watch it either. So it's mind-boggling that the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, it's for somebody else, a man in your life. Maybe I don't like men. Think of that. I'm buying it for me. I'm going to the shows for me. Yeah, it's really nice watching them in their small little outfits, but I'm going for the aggressiveness. That's my anger. That's literally my anger management, is going to the shows. Because I can scream at the top of my lungs and nobody judges.
Thank you. Kaylee?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, as far as being a female wrestling fan, hope y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. I often am perceived as less knowledgeable. And like my opinions just don't hold as much weight. I have a group of friends that I can speak wrestling with, and it's very back and forth, very comfortable. But then there's also a group that I'm in where I'm the only woman in the group. And they're very dismissive of what I have to say because I can only form my opinions around who I find attractive or who is being pushed at the current point in time. It can't be based on what I see and my own opinions of wrestling as a whole. And it's frustrating. It's gotten a little bit better and worse at the same time, if that makes sense, since I've started wrestling myself. Because I don't know if y'all can tell, but I'm a rather small lady. So I get met with doubt a lot. I bring up the fact that I want to wrestle and I'm immediately, well, how many women are in your center? 1. Oh, well, so you're going to be wrestling men then? Yeah, I am. Well, how are you going to do that? You're so small. They're so big. They're stronger than you. They're better than you. And I'm like, maybe for now. Yeah, for now. Give me some time. You don't have to be bigger than somebody to beat their ass. Pardon my French, but
David versus Goliath. You want to make it biblical.
there we go, see? And so I don't know, I just wish that women weren't seen as weaker or like were perceived as being weaker, less intelligent. Just apparently we just lack everything that men have. Everything. And it's annoying.
Yeah, but we have more brains than they do.
We do. They don't know that though.
That's okay. We're superior to them.
I have better pain tolerance than them in any day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I got on that one.
I mean, I'm also a hockey player. That's actually my job. I play hockey, both field and ice.
Awesome.
And I get called a puck bunny even though I'm playing. And I mean, if you've never been on the ice and had a man literally slam you down on pure ice, no one would do that just to find someone attractive. No one. You would not put your body through the amount of intense training just to go flirt with a player. It's just no. But
No,
on the
no thanks.
side of journalism, I work with a lot of magazines where it is me and a bunch of men. And even when I do press reads and I tweet, I find myself not wanting to say something because I know it's automatically going to be, oh, thanks for trying, darling, but you got that wrong. And you're less than because of the fact you're a woman, and people treat you like that. And it's very hard to try and have a voice, especially in a community when you're one of the very few women. And that's a real shame that it has to be like that to this day. But I don't
Yeah, they still have the mindset of barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the worst part is, like, because I've had that same experience being one of the few women in the organization, and like I was scared to speak up, and then I finally just did it. And even after, it's like, oh, Lauren, you're completely right, but we're gonna take it and make it seem like it's somebody else's idea, or like as if you're gonna be the one that you need to come to in a crisis. But until it's an actual crisis, no matter what you say, we're gonna go with somebody else's idea. And it's really frustrating because it's like, okay, I'm good enough then why am I not seen as that same amount of intelligence all the time?
Or you say something and then a dude says the exact same thing after everyone else just pretends like you didn't say anything, and all of a sudden, because it came out of a mouth with a deeper voice, oh, it's a fantastic idea. Where were you 13 seconds ago when I said it? No?
I had something like that happen at one of my old jobs. I was cashier in a liquor store that's attached to BJ's Wholesale Club. I run the place. I know everything that goes on in there. It was essentially my little part of the store. And we had a guy that was, he's like our cart attendant. He brings in all the carts from outside in the parking lot and makes sure that there's no stray carts anywhere. He was inside the liquor store just taking a break, getting a bottle of water because it's Florida and it's average 90 degrees. And this guy walks in, and because the two of us are standing there while he's on his break, and this customer walks in and he looks over at the guy that's, you know, my coworker, my friend, my dude, just sipping on a bottle of water, and he looks over to him and asks him where one of the obscure liquors was that we had, where it was in the store. I was like, hi, I can answer that question because I actually work in this department and we are out of that right now. So you can try back in about a week or so when we get another truck in, but until then, I can suggest a different one for you to try. And he looks at me. This guy is like completely shocked that me, a female, knows my liquor. I'm so sorry that you asked a 16-year-old, first of all, about liquor, and that you're too obnoxious and oblivious to think that somebody of the opposite sex can know something. God forbid. And then his face got so red. I took a little bit of enjoyment out of it.
I get that from my my night job because I work in a hardware store. So naturally, I know nothing, even though I've been there for 8 years and my stepdad was a contractor, used to take me out on job sites. The hell do I know? I just work there. So they will literally walk by me to the nearest person, being with testicles, to ask them a question. And if that person noticed what happened where I said hi and they ignored me just to ask them the question, if they think that I know the answer, they'll go, you know what, I don't know anything about it. She does, and name them right back to me so that they have no choice. And so it can get kind of dicey because just like, actually, I didn't know the answer is always like an option. But usually if it's something pretty easy or something that they know that I know, like flooring, they'll redirect the customer back to me, and I can't give into the temptation to give them a wrong answer and justify their bias. So I have to be able to answer it correctly. But it's just like, why did you just, you could have saved yourself a whole trip, like halfway across this area, and just let me answer instead of ignoring me because what? Because I am female and I can't possibly know anything about tools or houses. It's almost as if I live in one, you know? So it never made sense to me, but my stepdad thankfully was one of those people of, my mom was, she can't do that. That's a boy's activity. And he would respond with, well, that's stupid. Let her do what she wants. So like
My favorite phrase about kids' toys is to determine which gender should play with it. Do you operate it with your genitals? No, it's a kid's toy. Yes, it's not a kid's toy.
Yeah, so
There you go.
I wanted Hot Wheels and creepy crawlies. I could care less about easy bake ovens. Even though I like to bake, I just can't eat any of it. So
I only got the easy bake oven because I would eat the raw stuff. I would never actually put the meal inside the oven. I just ate it.
Same. Like, why let the light bulb cook it when I can just save the time?
Yeah, it's a light bulb that's cooking it. It's not good food. It is not nutritional at all. It's okay if it's raw when it goes inside my body. Same thing with cookie dough. I've made it to 27, and I've been eating cookie dough since I was like 4 when it was raw. Hasn't killed me yet.
Yeah.
And if that's the way I'm going to go, you know what? I'll enjoy it on the way out.
Exactly. If that's how I'm supposed to go, then just let it happen.
Because I grew up with, like, girls don't read comics. And so my first act of teenage rebellion was when I found out that the library had comics. And I checked out every one that I could fit in my bag.
I lived in the comic and graphic novel section of my library when I was in middle school and high school. They knew me in that section. They're just like, okay, well, we have a new one. I was like, give it to me.
My first comic was 30 Days of Night. So when I got to meet the author and the artist, I was like, you guys are responsible for my first teenage rebellious act, and that was to read comics. And so I got to talk to them about it. It was really funny. But like, it's gender roles are weird.
Yeah.
They don't make sense. Sorry, we've derailed. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Again so hard.
I started to derail, so it's my blame. Angelina?
So for me being a female wrestling fan, it's tough, but my coworker who's become my best friend that goes to the wrestling shows with me, like, it's really great that he has my back sometimes when stuff happens, because him and I will be talking wrestling at work, and some of our other coworkers like used to watch wrestling back in the day, occasionally casually watch. So him and I will be having like this intense conversation when he's in between calls, and then someone will try to jump in and like discount my opinion. Like when Brock Lesnar was Universal Champion, I was like famously hating every single second of it, because I was like, can we have a champion that's actually on the show? Like, who's there? What happened to this? You have to defend it in a month or relinquish it. Oh, rules don't matter? Okay, cool, that's fine. So that was my rant, like, daily, especially leading up to the Rumble when I'm a huge Finn Balor fan. And it was going to be Brock Lesnar, Finn Balor. I'm like, I'm going to have to sit there. I'm going to have to sit there and watch him lose this title, lose this shot at a title. He's not going to win, and Brock's gonna walk out the champion. I'm gonna be pissed. So I was like going through all this, and then another coworker jumped in and was like, "Yeah, but like Brock's like legitimately tough. Like he was in the UFC." And I'm like, "Do you think that actually matters for what I'm talking about? Like that is not at all. Like, could Brock Lesnar snap me, you, and everyone else in this room in half if he so chose? Abso-freaking-lutely. And the man only has like half a colon. Don't discredit what he can do, but I don't think he should be in possession of this belt in this TV show that I watch." Just like how you're upset about Game of Thrones and the storyline. This is literally the exact same thing. It doesn't mean that you think that the actress that plays whoever, Cersei, isn't really a badass. Like, he's really a badass. I get that. But in this storyline, so my coworker would step up for me and be like, no, like, that's great and all, but what she's saying is more valid. So it really helped. But at the same time, like, I need him to validate my opinion to some of these men. And my birthday came up in November, and my best friend and I have this running joke that it started when KO and Jericho were a tag team. He's the KO to my Jericho. Like, he's the young guy that keeps me like relevant and up on it, and like with all the hip terms. And so when the Festival of Friendship happened on Monday Night Raw, I was like legitimately shocked by it. I loved it as a storyline, but then I was like upset. And then my best friend calls out of work the next day, and I've never been madder at him than when he called out the day after the Festival of Friendship. So this has been like a bone of contention with us, because I was like, are you trying to throw me through a TV set here? Just leaving me to deal with all those feelings by myself? So for my birthday this year, he got me the Festival of Friendship playset, like the toys, which I have up on my desk here at home. And he gave it to me at work because that was the next time he was going to see me. So I had it on my desk all day. I cannot tell you how many people asked if it was for my son. And how many people went to him and said, that's really what you got her for her birthday? And I was like, it's legitimately the most thoughtful gift I've gotten this year. Like, legitimately, there's the most thought and care into it, and it means the most to me. Like, aside from like the picture my 5-year-old drew, which, I mean, it's great, but it doesn't look nearly as good as the Festival of Friendship set. So no one tell the 5-year-old his picture was terrible, but he's 5. He doesn't have that much talent yet. Like, it's great. It's in a drawer. But like, people just discounting the fact that that could have so much meaning to me and to our friendship, that like, that's something that I enjoyed. They just assume that, you know, it's for my child, or that like he's the most inconsiderate friend ever because he's just a dude and got something that he thought he would like for me. So that's been my experience. It's like, I need the guy to validate my opinion in order for it to be real.
Thank you. Finally, Alexis.
I've been in a lot of fandoms. Like, I work in 2 anime conventions, and I go to a lot of comic book conventions. I feel like wrestling has been the one where I've had to try to justify myself the most. But also, I've also had to kind of fight off more people bothering me about it, like thinking that me liking something is an invitation to anything romantic. There's like, I like comic books. It doesn't mean I like you. Please leave me alone. And probably the weirdest thing is like being on Twitter. I finally started getting active on Twitter, and if anybody had told me how bad it was, I would have changed my mind immediately and walked away and been like, okay, so we're not engaging on Twitter. Because like I've had a couple of interactions with MJF, as you saw the picture, and then I tweeted at him because he's teasing my friend who's in a wheelchair, and he wanted me to get him back. And I'm, again, with that age gap between me and my siblings, I was never going to be bigger. I have to be smarter. So I'm usually pretty quick on the draw. And the thing that threw me was not having so much to deal with people being mean to me because he invited it, which wasn't a big deal. It was like, yeah, everyone's, oh, you got roasted because he said you needed a facelift. It's like, oh, you know, how my heart, how did he know my one weakness? Validation from strangers on the internet. But it was more trying to fend off the white knighting, like I needed some sort of saving. And it was just like, you have to know, if I tweeted at him, I didn't do it because I want any attention other than for him to be mean to me. Like, you do it to get under his skin so he could try to get back under yours. That's the point. And it's like, I don't know if they think that I don't get it and that they need to inform me of what I'm getting into, or if they think that I can't handle it. Because like, if one of the tweets, somebody said you're not on his level, I responded with, you're right, I need spelunking gear. And you know, that's the kind of environment you put yourself in on purpose. But like, to have to then turn around and be like, and justify being there, like, oh well, I knew what I was getting into. He's not known for being polite. Same thing with going to any wrestling show, or like, well, why'd you make that sign? I was like, was it inaccurate? And I tell people, like, the reason I make a lot of MJF signs is because he's so fun to pick on. I drew him as a salt shaker and wrote salt of the earth. Like, how did that not just seemed like the best idea ever. Why did I have to justify that? Did you not get the joke? And somebody said they thought it was because I was a fan. I was like, I'm a fan of not liking him because he's a bad guy. If I like him, he's not doing his job. Why do I need to explain dynamic roles to you? Why am I explaining myself in general? Go away. Nobody likes you. And so I think probably the weirdest thing was that like I said, I go to all these conventions. I go to comic book conventions. I've had people, the one time I dressed as a female character, the guy talked to my chest the entire time, and that was still not nearly as off-putting as it's been with interacting with fans digitally. Because when they're in your face, they're all a bunch of pussycats because they know that there's going to be consequences for what they say, and they're going to be immediate. And whatever those consequences may be, they just don't want to find out. But as soon as they are online, they have a lot of opinions. And there's a group I'm in where I'm one of two girls. And I never thought I'd have to defend a female wrestler's weight in a chat when Google is a thing. Because I'm a very heavy-set person. And to somebody to tell me that Nyla Rose is 300 pounds landing on Britt Baker's knee, I was like, she's not close to 300. You've met her. I said, I'm twice her size. How heavy do you think I am? And suddenly the fight goes out. And I was just like, no. We're not going to ignore this. Come back. Like, again, a Google search fixes that. Why do I have to defend somebody's size to somebody just because an accident happened? I said, not only that, you're blaming somebody who's airborne. They had no control over their trajectory, but you're not blaming anybody else involved. You're not blaming the fact that, two other people had a hold of her and were the ones that tossed her. And it's like, accidents happen. It sucks. Nobody likes to see their favorites get hurt. But where was this outrage when all these other people got hurt? Where was this outrage when, Seth hurt the billionth wrestler? It's like
it's the same outrage they have with Nia Jax.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
And don't get me wrong,
and with Brie Bella as well, they were really raging about Brie, and she weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but there was male wrestlers that were botching just as much as her, that were getting absolutely nowhere near that amount of hate.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Nia has had definite unsafe moments, but like, if you look at how long she's been wrestling and you're trying to hold some of these people to, it's like with AEW and WWE, they're like, well, they're not the same. And I said, you're right, one's been around for 30 plus years and one started a year ago. If you're going to hold them to the same standard, then you're stupid, because you can't sit there and say that this 1-year-old should run just as fast as this 20-year-old. It's not the same thing. So it goes to the same point where if you're going to compare two people of the same age who have been wrestling for different quantities of time, you can't sit there and be like, well, they don't deserve to be up there, they're too green. It's like, well, it's the old adage of, how do I get experience if I can't do the work? But I can't get the work because I didn't have the experience. People are going to screw up. It happens. We're human. We're not robots. We're not programmed. But the fact that I have to defend more female wrestlers when accidents happen than male is frustrating. And thankfully, half of the guys kind of did jump in with the with agreeing with me. We're like, well, actually, no, you're wrong. But the fact that I had to start that dialogue and not let them pile on stupidity is just beyond frustrating. And that's the thing, is like, being a fan in person hasn't nearly been as bad as being a fan on the internet, because I can have an opinion about anything else, but in wrestling you have an opinion and they see that you're female. Like, I get why people will not use their real pictures in their profiles, because it invites way more problems than it should.
Yeah, I think, like, with social media too, that's the part that I have the hardest time with, is like just seeing how people get treated for being wrestling fans and also by other wrestling fans. But like, also not only just like female fans, but like female talent. I think that it's absolutely ridiculous. I saw some tweets directed at Brandy in my feed, and I ended up reporting them because I was like, there's no place for this. I'm like, when you're, and it speaks to just like how much work there needs to be done when you're literally a trailblazer in the most notable sense of the word, and you're getting demeaned because of who your husband is. And I saw just like accounts, and when I go to report, like, because I'm not gonna put up with that shit, I'll call it out, especially if you see that that's like, it's not an honest opinion or difference, and it's just like, oh, I don't agree with this, so here's me speaking out, but my whole account isn't dedicated to it. I mean, there's whole accounts that I've seen that are just trashing, whether it's using transphobia or just regular sexism or racism at female talent, especially with AEW. And within the past couple weeks, and I'll go, and it always bothers me to see like, oh, you're reporting this one tweet, but here, tack on the other 5 that fit in this category. Yeah. And it's just ridiculous to me how you get treated on social media. But then when you go and stand up, it's like, oh, well, why are they using their social? It's like, it's become so toxic to be a fan of anything on social media and be open about it, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and like the same group of people, they were criticizing Brandy for not being able to act like she acts very woodenly. I was like, okay, I'll give you that. That's a legit criticism. But let's be honest, Darby Allin's line delivery when he's in the ring is wooden, and it sounds like he's out of breath forever. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about anybody else talking very strangely. Just her. And I was like, I feel a little bit like you guys are picking on one person but ignoring everybody else. Like, so what specifically about Brandy don't you like? And again, the conversation started to kind of like die down because they didn't really want to say what the real problem was. It's like, y'all making me nervous about being in this group, just so you know. Like, I'm one of 2 women in here. And again, I'm just asking an honest question, because if you have a legitimate answer, you have a legitimate answer. I'll accept that. Somebody on Twitter said that I don't like Jake Atlas's finisher. It looks very awkward. And I'll agree. It could definitely be one that people won't like because it is very awkward. He does a cartwheel into a DDT off the top rope. But him saying that does not make him homophobic, and a lot of people jumped down his throat about it, saying he's homophobic because he said he didn't like Jake Atlas's finisher. He didn't say anything about his preferences, his genders, anything. And people will make some really wild leaps in general, but I feel like in wrestling it gets way more toxic than that because you'll get it from any side. It doesn't matter what your opinion is.
I think people just like to take the piss out of everyone when they want to express something on social media, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think like social media empowers, especially towards women, it, like what I've seen personally, just it allows you to just be so flippant with your reaction and what you're saying, because you don't have to get, even if you're looking at their profile picture, you don't see them face to face or anything. And I think like especially within wrestling, it's becoming very toxic because no matter what side you're on, you're always going to be wrong, whether you watch both shows, whether you're new, and God forbid you express your intelligence or like opinion, like they're going to take the piss out of every little thing. And it's become so just microscopic. Like, oh, they breathed for too many seconds between those 3 words that they said. Or, oh, they stood a little bit to the left more than the right, so the camera was a little bit off. Like, that's just that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's the little pieces I've seen. And it always just becomes so terrible. And I think like that's definitely a thing that affects female fans too, because you're already like, it just compounds, like you're already kind of wary because of, you're going to get a stereotype. But then if you go on and see that, it's like, it doesn't help anything or anybody.
Yeah, and the nice thing is at least like my experience, I went to an MLW show for the first time, and I feel like I have so many MJF stories very suddenly. MJF ripped my sign in half because he's an asshole, and it's like, dick, I had something on the back for another match. So I learned my lesson. MJF gets his own sign, just in case he's feeling destructive. Mm-hmm. And like the nice thing was that there was two guys that were right behind me, and immediately they go, "Did he just rip your sign?" And I said, "Yeah." They're like, "That's awesome!" And like I got street cred immediately. And I told somebody, I said, the one thing that throws me a little bit is just because I am not traditionally. This just sounds really self-demeaning, so bear with me. I'm not traditionally very pretty. I am plus sized. I am a little bit awkward, and I don't dress very tight clothes or anything. I usually am like very much a hoodie and jeans person. I think part of it's just because I am a tomboy at heart, and I work in a hardware store, so who cares? Who am I impressing? I'm a little bit less likely to get the same sort of responses as, say, if Kaylee were to have had the same experience. And they may accuse her of wanting attention just because she is a much smaller person or wearing clothes that are a little bit, you know, like you said, she's showing her shoulders. Ooh. So, yeah, I'm feeling very distracted right now. But the answer is that it very much, it also plays into body types as well, is like and confidence levels. So if you look like you're confident in your appearance and you dress a certain way, it definitely, unfortunately, invites it, and it should never do that, because you should be able to dress however you want. And I have a friend who's my wrestling baby, as I call her. She's new to going to wrestling shows, so like I take her with me and make sure she's okay. And she is a little bit of a ring rat. And she's like, "Are you okay with that?" And I said, "I don't care, you being safe?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Then whatever, it's none of my business." And that's exactly it. It's like there's a stigma on women possibly being ring rats, but the reality is that, you know, it's nobody's business but theirs and whomever they're with. It's not yours, mine, or anybody else's. And if they want to sit there and call somebody a ring rat, they've got to understand that it does not matter to them, because it does, unless the concern was they thought they had a chance and they don't. Who cares? People sleep with who they want all the time. It doesn't matter if they're a wrestler or some dude on Tinder. So she just happens to prefer wrestlers if the opportunity should arise, but she also feels that stigma of being called a ring rat because she slept with one guy, and the answer is, doesn't matter. I was like, "Were you safe?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Were you mistreated?" She said, "No." Then who gives a shit? It was a hookup. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Question 5. Recently we saw the creation of AEW Heels, as you all know. What can other wrestling companies do to involve female fans? Lauren?
For me, I think, first of all, treating your women wrestlers with as much importance as your male talent. I think that's like one of the bigger issues, is like, especially just to be able to make women fans in the first place, but 2, also give a sense of legitimacy to women who are fans. Because as much as, like, we've said it here, you're either typecasted into you're a ring rat, or you don't know anything, or, oh, that's weird because it's, you know, XYZ example from whatever poor booking happened in the 90s that got popularized, and that's what you think of automatically. And I think like that's number one. You have to treat your divisions with some legitimacy and make them feel as if they're just as important as everything else, because like I got really sick with WWE with pushes getting dropped, you know, both for female and male talent, but also like I recently, since COVID, watched a Monday Night Raw once, and I was like, cool. So, and I watch What Culture videos. That's like probably the only reason I know anything about WWE as far as storyline or news at this point, because I just don't watch it. But like, you can't give somebody a push, give them a title, and then bury them with one of the 5 people you've had in that same time frame for 5 years. Like, it doesn't work that way in sports anywhere else. It doesn't make sense. Like, if you're gonna pride yourself on having a revolution or in, being better than you were, you need to put your money where your mouth is, not just for a single pay-per-view, not just for, the month of October. You need to do it all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in wrestling right now is like, you're seeing the disparity. It's kind of like you're at this point where the exposure is real, the curtain's been pulled back. Like, you can look and say on the indies, like, this person's doing really good, and then see it in AEW, like, this division's doing really good, and then, like, not to just shit on WWE, but like, over here we have the same person on all 3 shows. I'm like, you're not letting your talent be talented, and like, you're also pushing you're not doing your diversity. Like, it's just a whole host of problems that come along with not treating your divisions the same way. But also, to me, like, I think that just makes it devalues the product for women, because if you're invested in that storyline, like, you want to see Naomi succeed or Rhea Ripley, then you're like, oh, there's a match with Charlotte, Sasha, Bailey, or Becky. Well, fuck, that's not happening anymore. Like, that's the thing, is like, you can see it, and that's the sad part, is like, you can't be invested. It takes it away from you as a woman, because you're like, oh, well, I don't like one of the main 5, or, they're not my tippy top favorite. You're screwed, because you know that they're never going to get there. And that's been the problem that I feel like we've touched on in this group a couple times, is just like, you want to see the product succeed. And I feel like when you're constantly disappointing your fans, or like, they can't see at least like 1 out of every 5 storylines go through the way you want it hurts. And then it also feeds that illegitimacy that feeds into so many other things here. So I think like treating your divisions like they're equal is the utmost important. And I know like other promotions are doing that too. And 2, treating your talent with respect, which goes back to point number 1, because it that also feeds into the social media toxicity and tearing down talent, and it just doesn't work. And then also, not singling them out, but giving them a space is really nice, because you want to give. I feel like the problem with making female wrestling fans and having them is there's always some other caveat to your fandom. Like, you're never good enough to just be, I'm a wrestling fan because I like it. And the thing is like, how many times have we said it on this call? At one point or another, there wasn't anything for you to like. And so I think like, just giving the fans what they want and making them feel some sort of thing, and not constantly being like, oh, this is really stupid, or oh my god, I can't believe I just watched that segment, like, what the hell. Like, I feel like just giving the best product you can, and treating everyone with respect, and not having shitty storylines or ones that literally make you cringe in the worst way is a start for some companies. But then also having forums like this and kind of giving some sort of outlet is really nice. I don't know how well it would go over with other companies, but like, AEW Heels has been such a good thing for me as a wrestling fan, because like, the entire quarantine, I've pretty much just been learning about the indies and wrestling and watching matches, and the fact that I like now get to sit here, once a month or every pay-per-view or every Dynamite and talk to other women who care in a legit safe space is amazing, because you've never had that before. And I think if more companies were just able to be more open to both their women talent and their female fandom, and not make it this kind of weird thing or not foster this weird hyper sexist environment where it's like, oh, you know, we got to do there, like we don't have bra and panty matches anymore, but like just to foster that or show those things in clip videos, like that's still harmful. And I think if you just let that kind of go by the wayside and help build this up consistently, then you'll be able to like get more women in, because they're gonna feel like this isn't something that they need to hide. You know, it's just as real as hockey or football fandoms. It's just as real as soccer, you know, being into your favorite soccer team. It shouldn't be any different than that. And I think if you just let the legitimacy happen within your roster and your company, it'll feed into the fan base as well. But that starts with, you know, the company in and of itself. So overall, I think just treating women with more respect and consistency that'll help grow the fandom and grow women in wrestling.
Definitely. Thank you. Benny?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just say try to do what AEW does, what AEW is doing with AEW Heels. Show us respect. Show us that you care about us. Give us storylines, appealing storylines that we can identify with, you know, that little girls can identify with and grow stronger, you know, because they're watching strong women on television. And that's what we want, and try to create a community of women empowering women, you know, a community where we can share our passion and talk about so many other subjects. I mean, we can open up about our personal lives or whatever. If we have a problem, we can talk with other girls or women from different part of the world and just find good friends, you know, find someone who understands, who listens to you. So just try to start this revolution, because I think that what we're doing now with AEW Heels, what AEW is doing with AEW Heels is a revolution. We are all pioneers and we are creating something great for the future. So I think it's more than, you know, doing a Zoom meeting from time to time. It's creating a community, a supportive community. That's it. So show us support, show us that you care, give us a voice. That's it.
Thank you. Mika?
I 100% agree with both Lauren and Manny. Respect it goes a long way, especially considering how it all began, like with the women, like, well, would start with bra and panty matches, how matches would be 3 minutes tops, where okay, and I hate to say this all right there, I may add one word, but there's another word that got thrown around too, that they were used as potty breaks right there as well. So just as long as if they could put the women division, if they could treat the women division, the women roster, and the women fan with respect, and just don't insult our intelligence, it'd be great. Especially since it would always get me upset even to this day, that to me it's like certain, like I'll even say, for instance, like I was thinking, okay, NXT, the Iron Man match with Sasha and if I even got that right, Sasha and Bailey, and everything going on in NXT, they would have like a way more than 3 to 5 minute matches, 30 matches, and everybody was standing up where everyone was applauding, and then we go back to the so-called main roster. Then we go back to the 3 to 5 minutes, and then to me it's like I feel like, okay, everybody, including myself, was going on social media, give women a chance, the hashtag give women a chance. And I'm thinking, okay, they were talking about a revolution. They were gonna start start throw away the Divas name. Now it's called a women roster. I was thinking, okay, it would go, but I keep seeing that with all the toxic stuff that's going on with social media, or from people, but like say with Nia Rose, for instance, the very second when she won the title, that to me got what was upsetting me to the most. It's like, oh, why is she the champion? She's not. Well, I'm not even gonna go there, but it's to the point like. If they could just, my opinion is like, okay, it goes a long way if you just treat people with respect, and just respect like you do with the men's. Like, you don't say stuff like that with the men's. So my feeling is, if you don't do that with the men's, if you just there should be no reason why all the negativity, all the toxic, and in the women's division should take place. So, in my opinion, is just basically basically, if you just treat the women roster, the women talent with respect, it could just go a long way. We're at a great start when it comes to the AEW heels, where we have a voice. We're also at a great start too with some of the women's roster. But I feel if we just keep it going, as well as get it in the same part with the men's division, and also keep the toxic environment out of there, we can only go up from there.
Thank you. Claire?
I think, echoing what the others have said, I think WWE in particular need to completely remove themselves from divas. I think, like, total divas has got to go. And just feeding into the stereotype we created, that's not going to at all. There's too many male fans that see that there's drama and just go, oh, well, that's all they're about, isn't it? And it just all stems back to the divas again, and that's all some male fans are ever going to see it as long as there is still that connection there. They need to completely distance it if they ever want female fans to ever, and I don't think it's ever going to happen until Vince steps down, unfortunately. But yeah, I hadn't heard about heels until George told me about it today, and I've looked it up and subscribed for it and everything, because I think it sounds fantastic. It sounds like a really brilliant way for women to have that safe space to discuss wrestling and everything. And some of the stuff I've seen in the groups, the wrestling groups, has just been like comment made about Charlotte at WrestleMania. She looks like she's got a bit of a podge on her belly, and I was like, "You're joking? Like, is that all you're looking at? Charlotte's wrestling? All you're looking at is her belly? Really? Like, why? Why is this a thing? Why are you just looking at them like this to me? It's gross. It's gross, and something needs to change in the wrestling community before female wrestlers start being treated with the respect that they deserve. It's come a long way, but there's some fans that still just look at it as just being glorified, and it's a shame because they deserve so much better.
Thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, I think, representation matters, obviously. And I think, echo kind of what everybody said. I think one other thing is like, not only just the matches and the women who are wrestling, but also the other women. So, being able to hear other voices or see other people, I think, is also something that could help introduce more girls and women, right? So if you're just, no offense, but like listening to Corey Graves and Michael Cole, or listening to I Love Excalibur and but listening to those three guys talk, it's like that's a very distinct like viewpoint. Whereas like being able to hear like Madison Rain on Impact, right? Like it's just different. She's got some sass, like you can relate to that. So I think there's some things there. And then just even in terms of, you know, you have like your interviewers, like you have Quinn McKay and Renee Young and Charlie, and like, that's great to see them. But I'd also like to see like stronger storylines even with them. Like they're just a prop at this point, right? Like there's that, like why can't, and I know that the superstars themselves are not as strong as like, you know, like having the rockers or like other people like who can play into those, but like, why is it that there's not like a take back to the type of interviews that they had with like Mean Gene and stuff like that, right? Like, you know, they have that talent. I mean, they do things in other broadcast networks and stuff like that. So it just feels like not only the storylines that are attributed to the matches are kind of could use some help, pretty weak in most areas. It's also like outside of the ring, right? In terms of that. So I think that's one thing that could help. I mean, I think it's also like telling stories. So I really like the AEW from denial. What was it from deniable to undeniable or whatever that series was that Cody did, that they did on like the roads to, and some of the intro packages, like the thing they did with Swole where they introduced her, like telling stories that make them much more relatable in terms of either real life or just even their character stories, right? I think doing that more and across all the different brands would really be helpful as well. And then sell their merch. Like, it's just, you go to shows, particularly, I know we're all kind of picking on WWE, but particularly WWE, I like throw a fit. I've stopped buying merchandise because you go and there's 25 shirts and there's one woman's shirt. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, why? You know? And these are like top sellers, right? They just pick one per brand and that's the one that they're going to sell. And I just think that like when you go to an event, you're like hyped to see these people, and then you like don't see that representation all over the place as well. So those are just a couple of the thoughts from my side in terms of like just getting more out there that will help, you know, see like kind of bring more women and girls to wrestling.
Thank you. Violet?
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit radical here. And, you know, I just feel like now is a good time to do it considering the parlance of our times. But I think that this is like a twofold story, that one place to go to watch women's wrestling, if you really want to watch women's wrestling, is unfortunately not YouTube, but Pornhub. And that says a lot. And that says a lot about the systematic problems that wrestling organizations, and maybe not so much AEW, but the wrestling organizations on both the indie and the WWE and WCW too, like ECW and all those have, and that they have like relegated women to being less than, and overt sexualization, fetishization, and making them as if they were just sex objects, not human beings, not athletes in their own right. And while, you know, even I was reading about, I can't remember her first name, but Blackheart, is it
Shotzi.
Yes. And I was reading an article about her the other day, and they went straight to something that she was like basically doing sex work. And the whole thing that the article, and it was a New York Post, which is trash to begin with, but it's focusing on that and not, you know, the actual impact that she's made on, you know, in her career with like NXT, for example. And it's really unfortunate that companies cannot stand up to like prop up their female talent, or to stop their videos from being posted on Pornhub so that like guys can do whatever guys do when they're on Pornhub. And I think AEW has done better, even though they're like very new, than like WWE has, like even with the story of the development of Paige and her going through the developmental program, being there with, you know, people who are models and not athletes. And while that's fine, if that's the direction you choose to be or choose to take with your life, like I support you 100%, but that WWE has made conscious decisions to like fetishize and sexualize their women wrestlers. So I think that there really has to be some real stances taken to say that we're going to stop this from happening unless our wrestlers choose to do that, but we're not going to push that agenda. And then beyond that, also lift up the voices of LGBT people within wrestling. Like, even with like Sonny Kiss, he is amazing. Put him on Dynamite. Take him off Dark and put him on Dynamite, for Christ's sake. People love him. People want to see him wrestle. Like, push him. Push our brothers and sisters in the queer space, and don't just like make them as if like they're a sideshow attraction. So, and I would also say, if you really want to get into it, have better moderations on your social media forums, like especially like your official page, and just go ahead and delete those people that are saying nasty, nasty stuff about Nyla, because it makes them speak like they're speaking for the brand. And you can moderate and do it. Like, don't be afraid of these guys. You don't need their money, because I will give you my money, and my money spends just as good as theirs does.
On the point of LGBTQ, it's one of the things I hate the most is that people will criticize that they don't explain Sonny Kiss or Nyla Rose. What do you need to explain? I don't understand. She's transgender. That's nothing wrong. It wasn't her choice. That's what she is in her life. She doesn't need to be reminded that every day. And Sonny Kiss, he's gay. Who cares? We don't need an explanation on why he's gay. And some people will say, let's make it into a storyline. Why do we need storylines that someone is gay? We all know what being gay is. You don't need to make it into a joke or a story. Just let them be wrestlers.
Right. And we don't need to perpetuate the myth that women can only get lifted up in their storylines by being a side piece to a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Tessa Blanchard has some controversy, but just think that she's not big enough to beat Cage or Elgin or Sammy. There are many male wrestlers who are petite, they're smaller. I mean, most of the elite guys are quite short for male wrestlers. They're not 6'3" giants. Just because you're a thinner, smaller wrestler does not mean that you're not as good as the bigger guys. That's what a whole face heel story is. You have someone who's typically smaller and they're going to beat your big guy. That's no different where a woman can be smaller and she can still beat your top guy. And that's something that needs to be discussed.
And I would love to see more mixed gender wrestling on TV, because like one of the best matches I've seen recently is Chris Statlander versus Joey Janela.
Yeah.
So much fun to watch. Like, put that on TV. And I know WWE never will, but like, whatever. Fuck Vince. Whatever. And just put it on TV. Let us see it. Not like mixed tags where only the women can tag the women and the men can tag the men. But like, let them do what they were trained to do.
Put it on TV and stop using domestic violence as an excuse to not do it. Like,
Right.
we're grown-ups. We're smart enough to understand the difference between the story taking place in the ring and domestic violence. Just because I see Zelina Vega throw a Hurricane Rana on her actual husband, Aleister Black, doesn't mean I'm going to try it on my husband at home when he doesn't do the dishes. That's not how this works. We're grown-ups. We can separate it. Like, I can see, like, she is incredibly talented. I am not. I would probably end up the injured party were I to try that on my husband. But, you know, just don't use that as an excuse, because it's not an excuse.
It's a weird excuse. It's like a paternalistic excuse, whereas, well, we don't want to show the men beating up on the women when I'm watching it to watch the women beat up on the men.
That's
Yeah.
And actually, it worked out with Lucha Underground as well, because they sorry about that again, but they even had something like that prior to whatever happened with them with the trios championship, because it kind of reminds me what I always see on AEW, like how and how they even criticized Kenny Omega for not supposedly not signing I can't remember pronounce her first and last name, Gianna
Purazzo.
Yeah, they want to criticize him on that, and I would to me, I always feel like, okay, they're to me, okay, that they accuse me of being a WWE crybaby. It's like, okay, thing is, the AEW roster is still new, and how that a roster needs to have that the women's roster sucks. Okay, well, first of all, the women's roster is still new. For them to me, it's like I think it's kind of a good call to not sign her because, especially with all this going on, to me it don't seem to make sense to hire more women unless they actually. I mean, to me, the women are doing they got a great start, but they have to up their game in roster first before hiring more people. When it comes to the roster, but if they're going to add another title there, it would, to me, it seemed to make more sense with the to add mixed tag like the trio championship, because Lucha Underground did something like this before, where my memory at the Lucha Underground, they would have Evilise was one of the trio championship. It worked out well with that. And Kenny Omega himself even said it during one of the shows on the AEW Dark that there were plans to possibly see they can put in mixed tag team in there too. So like you guys said, I know that WWE most definitely might not happen with the mixed tag team, but I'm thinking most likely with here I am that make with the AEW. They'll be able to do that just as long as they just gotta grow. I don't know if everyone agrees, because I would always get into many arguments about how I would always be accused of being a WWE being critical against WWE, or when really it's like, okay, that AEW just is still new, but give them time and give them room to grow, and then they will.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people that are fans of WWE and they are resistant to even giving AEW a chance. They always for some reason, they always go straight for the women's division with AEW. Like, I got into a discussion with somebody who is a diehard NXT fan. Like, she's at all of the Full Sail tapings. And she had tweeted something saying that, something along the lines of like AEW isn't doing much with their women's division and they're not growing it or whatever. And I was just like, you do realize that they're still an infant company, right?
Right.
They've only been here for almost 2 years now. You got to give them a chance. And she's like, well, they've had plenty of opportunities to sign other people from other parts of the world and they don't want to do it. I was like, they are still brand new. How many different ways do you want me to tell you this? Especially since the beginning of March, they couldn't do anything because travel from other countries into the United States was legitimately shut down because of COVID-19. So explain to me how they're going to expand their women's division when they can't get anybody from another country in to have them try out or to have them just straight up be part of the company. And she's like, well, this was happening way before the shutdown and everything. I was like, they've only been a company for 12 months, maybe. So what more do you want them to do? WWE didn't just pop up overnight like everyone is expecting AEW to do. So why are you all taking a shit on the AEW women's division? And she just kept going and going. And then she said that I was giving the same excuses that she was seeing from AEW on as to why they weren't doing anything with the women's division. And I was so tempted to be like, can you show me where they're saying this? Because I follow their Twitter religiously. Haven't seen anything like that.
Right.
But the point is also, they can't sign everyone because you'd go bankrupt. And a very good example of that was TNA. TNA tried to be too big and it crushed them. They have 100+ wrestlers on their roster. That is plenty when you're doing 3 hours of footage a week. And you also don't want to add too much because then it's overkill.
And it's also how much TV time do they have during that 2 hour span? Well, minus 2 hours, including commercials. they only have so much time and can only do so much. I mean, it's a big thing they've committed to at least putting a women's match on each one. I would like to see more. I'd like to see women's tag team title. That would be amazing. But
Yeah,
does
that'd be great.
time allow it? And unfortunately, they're like up against that, like that force.
And here's the other thing is that they're in a unique position to be incredibly picky on who they bring in. So there's reasons why they haven't brought certain women into the division, because of either some of the controversy that they may bring with them, or the fact that they maybe just aren't a good fit for what they have, who they have signed already. So they do have a pretty diverse group, and they're still finding their groove on how they want to book it. But at the same time, like I was working on a podcast, and I did before the pandemic, so now my research is kind of out of date already. But when I broke it down, WWE had across 5 shows, 160-something men and 60-something women across 5 shows, averaging 9 hours total of airtime, minus commercials. So that's not even a full 9 hours. And they treat the wrestlers like Pokemon. They got to catch them all. Can't let anybody else have them. I got to have all of them. And the problem is that's why I if you ever go on my Instagram, I pick on everybody. But when they signed Morrison, I made a joke with a video of a dude getting thrown in a big vat of people and it getting blended from an anime. It was just like a bunch of different wrestlers that nobody had seen for a while. It was just like, oh, look, they're just adding another one to the pile of people we're not going to see for a little bit. And, either we'll see them when they force their way in, or when they finally figure out who they want to job them to, or when they release them. Because either if they don't get in the news, they'll put themselves in the news by saying, I want to leave. And it's just unfortunate that with the women's division, it's under scrutiny, and it has a lot to build on. Like, there's so much that they have to go with. They got to keep in mind that they're still doing better than having all these women and then just putting the same 5 on all the time out of 60.
Yeah, that's what I had said when I was talking to or tweeting back and forth with that one person. I was like, even if they did have the ability to sign all of these different women from all across the world, like if they had the money to do it, and if they were actually physically able to do it, like if we were not in a shutdown worldwide, they don't want to have too many episodes in a row where it's just the same handful like other companies are doing. And I was hoping she was intelligent enough to see where I was going with it, but clearly went right over her head, because that's exactly what the WWE is doing. I think for the last 2 months, it's been Sasha and Bailey on SmackDown.
Yeah.
And on Raw, it's mainly been Charlotte, because
it's Charlotte.
That's the nicest thing I can say, because I don't like Charlotte. I can't.
It's everywhere.
I do have to say though, I love that Asuka's finally getting her moment, because she's just amazing.
Oh my God, when they revealed that Asuka was the actual Raw Women's Champion, when they did the whole reveal that Becky is pregnant, and Asuka was excited that she was like, oh my God, it's me. I'm the Raw Women's Champion. And then when Becky and Asuka is she's so precious, because she was more excited for Becky to be pregnant than she was for herself to be Raw Women's Champion. I was like, you beautiful human. And then there's Charlotte, who's now was, thank you, Io Shirai, who is the now former NXT Women's Champion. She wasn't on NXT.
No.
She was the NXT Women's Champion for 2 months? I don't remember when WrestleMania was.
But I'm going to ask something controversial here. Like, are you pissed about the booking, or do you not like Charlotte as an athlete? Because I think there's 2 different things that sometimes we have a hard time separating. And I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just curious, because I was pissed about that too. But I really like as an athlete and the things she's done to elevate, I do think that like she has some credence. But I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mixture of everything.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fair.
because like it is not a secret to anybody that knows me, that knows I'm a wrestling fan. I'm not a fan of Ric Flair.
Sure, that's fair.
Not a fan. So that dislike, it's not hate. It's just like I don't need Ric Flair. He can just go away. Is he in his 70s yet?
Yeah,
I don't know.
71.
Yeah, I think so.
So okay, so he retired when he was in his early 60s, which is good for him. But then he didn't stay retired. What's the point of retiring?
Nobody ever retires.
Yeah, and then so then that dislike kind of just bled into Charlotte, because to me she just gives off this fake vibe. It might just be me, but it doesn't feel authentic in some aspects. And then the fact that I just lost my train of thought. Oh my God, I was going and it just went. But it's the booking, and it's just like a general dislike because she's always pushed to the front. There was no reason for her to win Royal Rumble for the second time and main event WrestleMania for the second time, and to beat Rhea Ripley for the NXT women's title. Sure, whatever. I can sort of see that storyline, but then to not have her on NXT, except for I think 3 shows, and only one of them was a title defense.
Like Bianca Belair said, you don't even go here.
Yes! Oh my God, that when the 3 of them were in the ring together for NXT, oh my God. I constantly, whenever I find a new person that likes wrestling, I'm just like, just watch this video, and this is it. This is the best moment of NXT history, in my opinion, because Bianca is just like, you don't even go here. And she's not wrong. Like, even when she was
a treasure.
She really is. She is a gift. We don't deserve her. And even after Charlotte won the title, she didn't go there because she never showed up.
And
it's like she got a promotion and didn't show up for work.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, and it's an overall general issue I have with WWE is that they have picked their 3 people and booked themselves into a corner with all 3. They had nowhere to go with Becky. They had nowhere to go with Charlotte, and they really have nowhere to go with Bayley other than maybe her and Sasha finally turning on each other. And even then, it's still the same 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the 4 horsewomen.
You have so many other people you could bring in that have been there, that have put the time in. Like, I know a lot of people don't like Dana Brooke, but I still feel like she's put a lot of time and work in. She deserves to have a little bit more airtime. She's
been there for years.
She really has. And like, same thing with Natalya. I'm glad that she gets the airtime because she doesn't want the title. She just wants to push the younger talent because she's good where she's at. She recognizes that she's a mid-card, and she wants to make sure that she's pushing the right people. That's why she was working with Lacey. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more Lacey because she was finally finding her own, and then
they just shoved her to the bottom.
Yeah, she just disappeared. Yeah. So where did she get kidnapped? Where'd she go? So
yeah, like I saw a tweet when I was on just browsing Twitter last night because I was bored after the AEW Heels Zoom got done last night, and somebody, because I follow Lacey, I like Lacey, she's good people, and someone had tweeted something like, I'm just sitting here waiting for Lacey Evans to make an appearance on SmackDown or something like that, and they had tagged Lacey in the tweet, and Lacey had retweeted it saying it was like a southern blow off of it's not gonna happen. It was kind of like a sit down and have some sweet tea or something like that. Like,
yeah,
just wait your turn, honey, because it's going to be a while. And I'm just like,
yeah, like, and the fact that that I get, like, there's a decent amount of, you need to have some respect in the locker room, etc. But like, what did the entirety of the women's division do to be ignored so hard? Like,
But why do they have to write their characters on the personality of cardboard?
Thank you.
Yeah. That too.
Like I mean, I love Rhea's character because to me, Rhea Ripley feels authentic to herself.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you saw her as, I think her shoot name is Demi. If you saw her on the street as Demi, you'd get Rhea Ripley too, because they're like the same person, which is fantastic. I would also love to just sit down and talk with Rhea because she loves Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's the best horror franchise in the world, in my opinion.
I feel like part of the reason why the women are written on cardboard is because they're written by men.
That too.
It's like when you read a romance novel written by a man and the man talks about how the woman walks in the room and what her boobs did when she got there. Like, I don't know about you, my boobs don't do shit when I go anywhere. They just exist. Like, yeah. But if a man is writing it, he's talking about how the boobs are, and it's all focused on a man's perspective. And I think that the problem that WWE in particular has is there are no women writers in the room. So they don't write what women want.
They just fired one of their female writers.
Yep, the one that did the Mandy Otis storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was fantastic. Like that was the one romance storyline that made sense to me, because it was these two people falling for each other because of who they were, not just because
they're beautiful people.
They're beautiful people and this is what they look like. It gave authenticity to it versus like, and I think that's the thing that they really need if you want to bring women in, is authenticity and give them a voice in the writing room, because
I think
what you have
NXT
now
has done a better job than like Raw and SmackDown. NXT, because they're letting like Rhea have her own voice. They're letting Bianca Belair be Bianca Belair. And like the whole EST thing, that's been her calling card since high school, I believe I read. And that's like an intrinsic part to who she is as an athlete, as well as her wrestling character. And it's better on NXT. But I think that NXT in a lot of ways has been a little bit more progressive, and I hate to use that word, but they've been a little bit more willing to like bend the traditional WWE rules, and I think it's because Vince isn't necessarily the helm like he is.
Does Vince even know
that's what
NXT
I was gonna
exists?
That's what I don't think he does. I think he just thinks that it's still part of like a training thing that they just kind of pull people from, because I was gonna say something about that too. You can tell when you're watching WWE, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or NXT, you can tell when Vince has his hand in something because it blows. But then when he has absolutely nothing to do with it, zero input, nothing, it's fantastic. And I know it's not going to sound nice, and I say it in a joking manner most of the time, but they need to stop taking him out of the home. Leave him at the home, because when he's gone and away from WWE and doesn't have anything to do with what they're putting on TV, it's great. Nobody has any complaints until Vince walks in. Figuratively and literally, that thing with Triple H's 25-year thing when they had Vince come out, I was sitting there confused for the entire time Vince was out there. It was so awkward and uncomfortable, and I was so glad when it was over.
Well, leave Vince at home, but let him have supervision so he doesn't get involved in politics.
Oh yeah, he needs to be treated like a child.
I hate to be that person, but Georgia, I forgot what the question was.
Oh, that's okay. So did I.
Wait, there were questions?
Yeah,
at some point, somewhere.
I'm going to do one final dive, going off topic point. Female characters, Impact. They have characters that WWE will never touch. You have Rosemary, Havoc, Sue Young. You want to see real strong women characters where women have created their own character? Look at the insaneness of Impact. The question was for now, Shauna, what can other wrestling companies do to make women feel more included?
I actually had an answer already set up for that from when you had sent out the questions earlier. Because I'm clearly, well, I hope it's obvious, but, or actually not really. I'm a larger individual. I am plus size. My favorite store to shop at is Torrid. They love me and my money. So one of the things that other companies can do, and I say the other companies because AEW is already doing this with PWTs, have sizes that are actually fitting of normal sized women. And I say normal size because what they consider normal size is, it's not normal size. I would kill for a Rhea Ripley shirt from WWE Shop, but I can't get that because they don't go big enough for me. Well, they do for the men's sizes, but I would love to be able to get a women's fit.
Yeah.
But they don't go bigger than a 2X, and when they do go bigger than a 2X, it's like, huh? And then it goes out at the hips. It's like, that's not plus size. What are you doing? What is wrong with you? So if they had sizes that fit literally everything, every size you can think of, people would be more inclined to watch them, because like if they find a new character with that company, be like, oh, I love this person. Like with AEW, I am desperately in love with Jimmy Havoc. After I found out that he was signed with AEW, I ran to Pro Wrestling Tees and I got his "I Hope You Suffer" t-shirt, which is my profile picture on Facebook. When the face masks went back in stock on there, I got a Jimmy Havoc mask and a Darby Allin mask. But that's because I like the half skeleton face. And Darby Allin. Pro Wrestling Tees, they offer more sizes. They literally go to 5XL. I would kill for a 5XL because I'd sleep in it or wear it as a dress. But I can't afford a $30, $35, $36 shirt, because, you know, the bigger the size, the more money they're going to tack onto it, which is sneaky.
Yeah.
Because they don't tell you that until you get to the cart. And then, like, so just the bigger sizes for anyone and everyone, especially for if it's going to be a women's fit, because that's me. And then, like Maggie was saying before, I think it was Maggie that had said it about the merch at the shows. Yeah. The live shows, when they go on tour, those are the places, that's the prime opportunity for you to get your merch sales up. So why would you just stick with the top 5, 6, 7 performers that you have that are already your top sellers? There's no logic in that. So why don't you bring merch from someone that's on the low card, someone that's not on TV all the time, someone that you don't think is popular, but hey, guess what? There's thousands of people that are watching your product and paying you and giving you their money that love them. And they would love to be able to go to the show and, first of all, see them wrestle, which they're probably not going to be able to because it's still like a televised episode of pick a brand, but without the cameras. They would love to see them wrestle. They won't. And they would also love to be able to buy their merch and not have to wait a month and a half for it to get there. Because if you're going to keep, if you're going to keep someone, the easiest way to do it is to make their merchandise available.
I have the same problem, but for a different reason, because I'm in the UK and import fees are ridiculous. Like, you're looking at 50 extra pounds just to bring a shirt over. So when you go to an event, that's the only way you can get a shirt. And when you only have one, it's really agitating, because even if you don't like the person, you feel like, well, you know, I haven't got any other options here. This is literally the only shirt they sell. Like, I was looking at a shirt specifically because I have a Jimmy Havoc one that I've sort of, it looks like it's been for a death match. It's got holes everywhere. I was trying to think, oh, I should wear a shirt for Zoom and this. And the only one I could find was this Banner Club t-shirt.
Nice.
And that was the only one that I could ship over here. That wasn't 50 quid
Yeah.
extra. So they need,
Yeah.
especially for international fans. That's my personal rant about shirts.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Angelina's comment in the chat. WWE shirts feel like a recycled Brillo pad. Listen, I have the T-shirt that they made for the Forgotten Sons, Jackson Riker excluding, because that's a different conversation for a different time. But I didn't like him anyway. I absolutely love Cutler for very, very unknown reasons. I randomly chose him as my favorite. And it's a weird color. It's just, why is it like olive green, first of all? And the material does not lend to stretching out at all when you're trying to make it actually fit and feel comfortable. But also going back to, I think one of the other comments that was made with just feeling included, I think it was Alexis I was saying when MJF ripped her sign and she got the street cred for being ripped up. I was at an NXT show not far from where I live, and I was wearing the Forgotten Sons shirt just on the off chance that they were actually booked for the show, because that would have been a great thing. And they came out and I was feeling everything. So I stood up when they came out because I was excited they were actually there. And, you know, Wesley Blake, the more outgoing of the three, because I always managed to get front row, he had pointed at me from when they were up on the turnbuckle, and I'm just like, yes, they see me. And I was totally fine with that. And then afterwards, after they won the match, they went over to one other person who had brought a book for them to sign, because they usually do that at the shows. They go over and sign stuff. And then Wesley Blake comes over to where I'm sitting, like 5 or 6 people down from that person, with the permanent marker still in hand from that person, and then ends up signing the back of my left shoulder of my shirt, and standing there, and then calls Steve Cutler over, and the three of us get a selfie, and I'm just standing there visibly shaking, like I was vibrating. I was so happy that it had happened. And then after it was done, I looked around and I was like, did that really happen? Because it's like, there's tons of other people that are definitely smaller, prettier girls in the crowd that they could have gone over to and paid attention to. And I'm just like, y'all came to me. Am I in the Twilight Zone here? Is this a thing? Did we have this? And I look over at my friend that was sitting next to me, and I was like, can you take a picture of the back of my shirt to prove it's real? And it was real, still on my shirt. And that picture is now the background on my phone, because I'm not letting that memory go, because I was like, yep. But like, just to have everyone, especially us bigger girls, just feel as important and as seen and acknowledged as the smaller, acceptable sized girls, that's huge.
Thank you. Kaylee, do you remember the question? Because we digested again.
What we can do to include, oh wait, hold on.
Be more visible.
Improve. What we can do to improve and bring more women into wrestling.
Bring more women in. I think so, because everybody's touched on a lot of different things that I absolutely agree with. So like something that hasn't really been brought up yet. As fans, especially the women fans, I feel like we have to be a little bit more proactive in trying to educate the baby marks, and trying to, you know, like take them by the hand and be like, no, we've got you. This is a safe space. Let me help you. Because I didn't have that. I had my guy friend Colton, who likes wrestling for completely different reasons than I do. And he just has a different perspective being a man. He's into the men's. He doesn't really care about the women's division. It doesn't mean anything to him. Whereas I want to see it thrive. I want to see strong women come out and not be sexualized and fetishized. And I feel like as a women wrestling fan, I have the means to provide someone else with a place to talk about how they feel about things. And I think that just as a community, we're doing great with AEW heels, but it should have been way before this.
Yeah.
Should have been coming together way longer, like way before this. So I'm glad that we all are here now. Better late than never. And that's where I'm at. As the fans, we need to stick together. We got to have each other's backs and be willing to share opinions. Like, honestly, I was just telling a friend that this has been one of the coolest things ever because everybody is sharing stories, opinions, things that they like and dislike, and nobody's talking over each other. And nobody's like, I've seen some disagreements on things and it's been completely civil. It's been, oh, well, here's why I feel this way. Why do you feel differently? And I really appreciate that. And I think that we need to try harder to make that a more regular thing. Just support each other.
Hopefully, we'll get to do more of these. I mean, I want to do more of these. So hopefully I will be allowed to do more of these in the future. Or I'll just force my way into doing it and no one will want to read 15 of them, but we'll just keep going. Angelina.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We just keep doing this. No one can stop us.
No, yeah, we'll
This just becomes the regular thing. Yeah. I think that one thing that, I think I kind of said it already, like women writers, like have a woman's perspective in the writing room when you're booking things, and not just for women's wrestling either, but have them in there for the men's wrestling too. Like get a woman's perspective on some of these storylines, because some of them, like if it feels like they're doing it so like brute force kind of, and there's no empathy at all whatsoever. And the example I have for that is, of course, WWE, and I feel so bad. I don't actually feel bad at all. Sorry. No, sorry, not sorry. Do not feel terrible. But the storylines with Jeff Hardy and Sheamus recently, I feel like if there was a woman that was sitting in that writing room who could have been like, maybe not a DUI, maybe not a urine test, in the middle of, like, we've done the urine test in the middle of a ring thing before and it was poorly received then, it's going to be even worse received now, and you didn't even dilute that apple juice at all, so how did he get that much in the jar being that dehydrated? Like, come on. Like, no empathy at all for people. And there is a way they could have done that same basic storyline with a little bit more empathy and consideration from maybe a woman's perspective that would have been much more well received and still furthered it exactly the way that they wanted it to, or better, honestly. And I think, and a lot of the things that we've suggested I think would be great ideas, but I think that they need to come from a place of authenticity, because if you do it just to try to get the women in because you want our dollars, we're gonna figure that out real quick, that you don't actually mean shit. Like, you need to mean what you say when you say it and mean what you do when you do it. And if you don't mean it, I'm going to walk right back out the door. And I feel like that's why heels feels so real and so good. And like, this community is giving us so much hope because there is that authenticity there. Like, we know that Brandy means business when she announced heels. Like, we know that she means it because she's been there, she's felt it, she's been in our position. She's been looked at as lesser and not a real wrestler or not really into this business simply because of who she's married to. So I think that when you come from a place of authenticity, you will get more women for the longer term and put women in the writing room across the board, not just for, the women's storylines. Like, oh, let's get a women's perspective for the women's storyline. Like, no, you need women's perspective everywhere. It needs to be felt everywhere. And once you have that everywhere, like, because women aren't just going to tune in to watch the 1 or 2 women's matches. You want them to watch the whole show.
your sponsors want them to watch the whole show, so put their perspective throughout the whole show.
Yeah.
Can I just add what AEW is doing with Aubrey Edwards is phenomenal.
Yes.
I
And
want
from the
Aubrey Edwards
first-
to adopt me to be my mom because she is kick ass.
Well, then that
Like,
would make
when
us
I grow
sisters
up, I
because I
wanna
want
be a
her
ref.
to be my mom too.
I want to be a ref just like her.
I just want to be Aubrey Edwards when I grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I would say that, but I don't think I could ever be as badass as Aubrey.
Yeah.
Oh, the way she gets
proud.
to Jericho's face. Oh,
Okay,
it's-
that is just
Oh, I love
beautiful
that.
when she gets in his face and she's like, "I'm the ref. This is my ring. You back your ass up."
And he does.
And he does.
I think
Yeah,
that's
I do appreciate that they didn't make her the meek ref and that they left that to Bryce, because first of all, Bryce is hilarious.
Yes.
But he's such a goofball. I got to meet him, and he's as adorable in person as he is in the ring. But also, I love that she is a no nonsense, take charge. I ain't scared of you. I don't care how big you are, Hager. Get the hell out. And
I would love to
appreciate
see.
that.
Yeah, I would love to see her get in Lance Archer's face.
Yes.
Oh my
She'll
God,
be so cool, though.
that would be. I think that would be better than her getting in Jericho's face because he's scary.
She'd have to stand on the middle rope to get in his face.
You would 100% do it if it meant proving a point.
Exactly.
And I've gotten to meet Lance a few times at Warrior Wrestling, and he is as huge in person as he looks in the ring, but he is like the biggest teddy bear.
Oh,
yeah,
Like,
he's a good
him and-
guy.
Him and Brian Cage are genuinely very nice people.
I would love to meet Lance Archer.
If you ever get a chance, do it. He's delightful, and he's so goofy.
Oh, for some reason, I don't doubt that he's a goofball.
Yeah, I told him just before his match with Moxley in Japan, I said, "Oh, good luck with your match." He said, "You should be telling him good luck because he's gonna need it." And I'm like, "No, you're totally losing now. Like, absolutely in my mind, you're definitely losing that belt." And he lost it. It's like, called it. So,
Another thing I'd like to see is with this open challenge with the TNT Championship, I would love to see a woman challenge for it.
I was really hoping
Yes.
for that with the
Yeah.
tournament because they didn't show genders on any of the blank people. I was convinced it was an intergender title.
Yeah.
It might be.
That
I
would be
think-
amazing.
It'd be the best move.
I mean, it's an open challenge. Everybody could show
Yeah,
up.
everybody, you don't even have to be in AEW. So I'm really
Yeah.
hoping, like, since they made it so very open, that 1 week Cody just stands out there because he has never announced opponent, and then just like Nyla Rose's music hits and she comes out to challenge for it.
Yes.
Here's
Like after Cody announced that it was open to everyone out and including non-AEW people, and he had said that on Twitter. I don't know if you guys know who Phoenix AEW, that's her handle on
Yeah.
Twitter, Amy.
Yeah.
Love her to death and back. She had retweeted it, and I had replied to her tweet, and I was like, I really hope I'm not the only person that immediately thought of Marty Skrull.
Yes. Oh, I
Yes.
love that so much.
Oh my God, I think I might die if that match actually happens, because I have never met Marty Skrull. He is on my many, many, many people that I want to meet and just talk to, not just like to just like freak out over, because I will. I'm so outrageous when I meet people. But that's kind of like a dream match for me for that to happen. Kind of like the tag team match that's happening on Wednesday with Superbad Death Squad against the Young Bucks. When Jimmy Havoc retweeted that, because I have his tweet notifications turned on because on brand for me. But when I saw that, I was like, this is a dream match that's actually happening that I didn't know was a dream match that I needed to see. And it's happening. And thank you, AEW.
I love how, with the mention of Aubrey Edwards, this whole interview just went to hell. Straight away, just everything fell apart. We were.
I thought wrestling does that to you.
Oh, was it my turn?
Yeah.
I
Fell apart
just
with
started.
love.
Okay. So one of the things I think that they could do to improve is female inclusion in wrestling, right? For fans or visibility?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what other companies could do to make women feel more included.
So one of the main things that I would like to see, because there are a lot of companies that do intergender, it's mostly just the main two that haven't yet. Even WWE kind of like dabbled in it but never really let it happen, is to kind of see them do away with, this sounds horrible. I want to see them do away with a lot of like the romance story arcs. So not like all of them, but some of them are incredibly toxic. So like we want inclusivity for LGBT, so having a straight woman and another straight woman pretend to have had a lesbian relationship, I feel like really just isn't helpful. I'd rather it be more genuine. So because I get there's a huge soap opera aspect to it, but you've got somebody like Sonya Deville who they could be utilizing a lot more, and they took Lana and Liv and threw them together in the middle of a different love triangle and made it like a love rhombus, and derailed that whole story anyway. But also the inclusivity, if they are going to do romance story arcs, like they have Otis and Mandy, but if the roles were reversed where it was somebody that was a woman who was more built like, say, Tamina or Nyla, it would have been played for laughs rather than it being a serious thing. And so
with that.
Huh?
It was a good job.
Yeah.
And it was just.
And I would love to see them, if they're going to continue using women in storylines, to not treat women as property and not see them treat the women as a joke to be made fun of and used as a punchline. I'd like to see it be more serious. And not only that, but like we said with the intergender with AEW, I wish they would do that more, just because they do have so few women's matches, but that's because the roster is still being built. It would give them a little bit more of an ability to utilize more of their talent that is still there, since I know some of them may be not there due to travel. Like we haven't seen Yuka Sakazaki and Riho for a while. So, but they do have other women back there, and I would love to see some of them hold their own against some of the men performers. Like Chris Statlander had a really fun match with Orange Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's thankfully not just a joke wrestler anymore. They're starting to show that he can really wrestle, and I'm glad for that, because I was really concerned how they were going to book him. But to be able to see him, like, see them mix the women and the men up, at the very least in the mid card, to get it started, and then work themselves up to something bigger. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to say, well, they don't want the men and women fighting because of domestic violence. But the reality is, you don't want to explain it's okay to be transgender and it's okay to be LGBT, but you also don't want to explain why it's not okay to hit somebody that's your spouse. Like, you're putting a lot of responsibility on other people so that you don't have to deal with it. So to me, it's a cop-out excuse to be lazy. And so I think that the intergender wrestling will definitely help boost the women's division and make it more serious. But then also to kind of, like you said, with the merch and the inclusivity, the women's sizes are kind of funky to start with. They don't carry the women's sizes at the shows either. You can get unisex usually from the shows I've been to, and that's it. So I would love to be able to actually get a women's shirt that does fit me at a show instead of having to order it every time.
Okay, I have one question, and it's a quick one, but I'm aware that for Benny, specifically, it's like half 2, and for Claire it's 1:30. So if you want to go first so you can leave, then I'll do that. So it's, which male or female wrestler to you is the face of the wrestling female revolution? Doesn't have to be WWE.
I mean, Kenny Omega for the men. I think we all agree with that. I mean, it's obvious. And for the women, I have different names, but I'd say Tessa Blanchard, because she is now world champion in Impact, and she is world champion in male division. So she is the woman who had the most impact on women's wrestling for me. But there are so many names for many different reasons, because Brandy Rhodes is the face of women's revolution in wrestling now, for what she's doing with AEW, what she's doing with AEW heels, what she's doing in general. She's a powerful woman, and she deserves to be the face of this revolution. So I'd say those names.
Thank you. Claire?
I don't know about a male.
Can be male or female. Doesn't have to be a male. I just didn't want to say only female and then everyone be like, but there's men who have done stuff. So generally.
I think the future of women's wrestling, I think, is probably Toni Storm. I want to say Toni Storm. She's doing really well. I'm really well fortunate. I think she's fantastic, and I think she's really going to do some pretty good things with it. And I think it's really like a huge impact. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, back to the original order with Lauren.
I'm going to go though. I'm going to quickly.
That's fine. Thank you so much for jumping on at the last minute. So
Hi.
Bye, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
For me, I think I'd have to like separate it a little bit. Because I grew up in the ruthless aggression era and watching that, I'd have to say, to like really start just even putting those pieces in place, people like Lita, Trish Stratus, and Beth Phoenix, who were able to make those placeholders to give that initial like, hey, she went from being a valet to a successful women's champion, and took the table bump from the Dudleys with full force because she insisted on it. That was Trish Stratus. And Lita just being Lita and not, necessarily conforming to the whole, I have to wear a skimpy outfit all the time and like barely wear anything. And I can do ladder stuff too. And Beth Phoenix for just being like, to me, she's had the most impact on crossing the gender line, because she was like the first one since China, but like the first one I actually saw, not on tape, go into a Royal Rumble match with the guys. So for me, like just at being able to get the ball rolling to have what we have now would be those three. But as far as like the actual revolution that like I consider happening with heels and AEW more than like what WWE was trying to cop out on, I think I'd have to go with Brandy, and honestly all of their female talent to me, because they're truly like taking those like steps that were laid for them and like that map, and they're taking it and making it into something that even 5 years ago wasn't a thing really. Like they're making it more inclusive for everyone. And I think as far as making a true revolution, like Brandy, absolutely, but the same can be said for people like Nyla and even Dr. Baker. Like I personally, being a young professional, like going to graduate college soon, seeing that like you can have a career and then also another career or hobby thing that you like. To me, that is one of the most powerful messages I get out of AEW programming every week. And I think that just their whole roster is so revolutionary to me, especially because, like, looking back at what I grew up with and looking to, like, now, I just am amazed that we have this jump-off point with these amazing people leading it. So definitely Brandy and the entire roster.
Okay, I'm going to go to Angelina next because you need to leave, so that's fun.
Yes. So for me, it's hands down Brandy Rhodes right now because of everything that she is doing for the women. Like, it feels like Heels is her baby. Like, this is her thing. And I also feel like, but she's not necessarily an in-ring talent. So I think in-ring for me would have to be Nyla Rose, because she is out there breaking barriers, representing people that have had absolutely no representation, and not just in the trans community, but the Native American community as well. Like, there hasn't been representation of someone like Nyla on TV every week, and to have her there is just, she is the future to me of how wrestling is going to look going forward. So for me, it would be Brandy and Nyla.
Thanks.
I gotta head out, so bye, ladies.
Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, Mika.
I've been thinking about this that question, and since you sent me that, I've been thinking mostly from where I started, but then I look back on it from who started with the whole. Because to me, with the WWE, well, I hate to keep saying it, but it's like I mean, I always assume that hey, they started on it, but it seems like they come back. But to me, I would say on the female division, I'm cross between Brandy, mainly because AEW is her baby, and basically this she's someone who's basically is, even to this day, is dealing with all the BS and all the toxic environments going on, all because of who's in her life and who she's attached to, and she just keeps it moving. I find her to be someone who's not only inspiring, but someone you can look up to, someone that you that whether or not she wrestles is a huge icon that could be the face of the true face of women's revolution, followed by I guess also as a person. I hate many people want to accuse me of that. That's fine, but being a person of a woman as well as a person of color, I just really see her as someone I would strive to be. I'd be half this as like to someone that with all the negativity keep pushing. So in the female version, it would be Nia Rose. Brandy. But in the males, I'm the one in the male division, as much as I would say Kenny too, but at the same time, there's one that keeps popping in my head too, because I keep hearing it and with Trish Stratus with Finn Finlay, because I always hear that he's back when they were the Divas, that Finn Finlay was the reason why they even had training or tried to move up from where they need to be in the first place. So I would have to go. Female version would be Brandy for sure. Queen Bee right there. The male would be Finn Finlay.
Thank you. Violet.
So I'm gonna take a different perspective. I want Brandy to absolutely have her moment, and all the kudos to her. But my male and female are Nyla Rose and Sunny Kiss. Sunny, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm tired. My brain's melting. But it's because they're both not only people of color, but also because they come from marginalized communities in general, and that it's good to see more representation on TV. And I say that very carefully because I want to make sure that I don't tokenize them in the process. However, it's good to see like a non-cis het white guy being pushed, you know? It's like, we don't need another one of those. We've seen them a million times. And so for someone like me, it's good to see like queer representation on television in all shapes and forms, because it's time that that happens more often. So that's where I see it.
Thank you. Sure, it is Shauna, isn't it? That's next. You're next.
I think so. I think I'm next.
All the screens have gone muddled now, and I'm just.
I'm gonna go with for the female. You know, like everyone else has been saying, for sure, Brandy, because of everything that she's done. Just literally grabbing the bull by the balls and just running with her position of being the chief brandy officer and having a say. She's she's the only woman to actually have an equal say in what happens in the company that she works for. And for the male part of it, I'm just going to say AEW as a whole, because I'm not 100% sure on NJP, New Japan or Ring of Honor or anything else, but I'm very familiar with, how WWE is run and everything. But to my current knowledge, AEW is the only wrestling promotion that is actually run by wrestlers. Vince does not have in-ring training. He thinks he does, but he doesn't. He made a couple cameos in the ring. Saying that Vince McMahon is a wrestler is saying that Michael Cole is a wrestler because he had 2 matches. 3, I think. So AEW as a whole would be the male wrestler that is bringing everything forward, because they have seen everything. They have been in the locker rooms with everyone. They've seen how people are being treated, and they are allowing their the people who work in the company, not necessarily for them, but that work for the company, because it's not necessarily theirs. Just like John Moxley always says, it's not his title, it is the fans' title. It's not, AEW is not the owner's company, it is the performer's company, it is the fans' company, and they're listening to their fans. They're seeing everything that their fans want to see, and they're actually listening and trying to implement it as much of what is being suggested as possible. Unlike WWE, who just heard that, who was hearing that, they wanted the women to be pushed more, and they gave us to the Women's Evolution for a couple months. And then it's like a child with a toy. They lost interest in it and went somewhere else. And they just kind of forgot about it for a couple of years.
Thank you. Haley?
Okay. It's kind of cool to hear everybody who's been watching wrestling a lot longer than me, hear all of your guys' opinions and learn new stuff. So thanks for that. Let's start there. My favorite is, as far as leading the women's, I would probably go Brandy, just because that's the strongest woman that I've watched consistently. And I just really enjoy this whole AEW heels thing that was brought together, because like I touched on earlier, as female wrestling fans, we really got to stick together and help each other out. And as far as men, I'm gonna go Kenny Omega. Just I relate to him on a lot of levels, as far as interests outside of wrestling, and it's been called into question his sexuality a lot. That happens a lot, and no one to this day is still 100% sure. There's no, there are hints, that he's mentioned like, oh, I don't really have time to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And so that makes him a lot more relatable to me, because I also am like in a situation where I don't really care what your gender is. I really just don't. If I like you, I like you. But it's not something that I ever bring up in conversation just to bring up, because I don't feel like that's the focal point of who I am as a human being. It's just kind of there. I have so much more interesting things to bring to the table, and it makes him seem like he's got the same attitude, and that makes me just feel a little bit more represented.
Thank you. Alexis?
So I've got kind of two for each one, for different reasons. And one of them is, like, for the men, I would say I that one I'm torn on, because part of me says Dustin Rhodes because he is a veteran and he has taken his job to be, I need to put over everybody I face that needs it. Like, he's willing to take as many losses as it takes to make these younger talents look so much stronger than him, so that they can continue their career, because he knows his career is going to end much sooner than theirs. But I also lean more towards Sammy, so because he is a young upstart who, much like Zack Ryder, built himself using social media and just being a very charismatic person. And when Jericho eventually retires, Sammy would be a great heel to kind of start taking over that spot. And for the women, again, Brandy is a great choice. She, not only did she build up the company that she was in to the extent that she was in, and make sure to be an inclusive place, but she also takes criticism. Like, we were talking about the Nightmare Collective. She could have fought that and said, no, we're still going to do it. But she said, you know what? Fans don't like it. This is not working. It's early enough. We can just shut that down. And, click, click, delete, it never happened. And to be able to do that and be humble enough to understand that your opinion's not the only opinion that matters is incredibly refreshing. And then for female wrestlers, it's rough. I'm honestly going to go a different way and say Becky Lynch, because she's the first real believable anti-hero that we'd had. It just sucks that they backed her into a corner with their booking. But when they initially built her up as this no-name upstart with red hair and a thick accent, which should normally be somebody that they ignored in favor of anybody else, and she was willing to look like a badass, not take anybody's crap, and break the rules, and people were still behind her. Like, she could do some slightly heelish things, but because it was for the right reasons, it was acceptable. And not a lot of women in wrestling had been a good anti-hero. Had that Stone Cold Steve Austin feel to them and pulled it off successfully. They tried, and it didn't translate well, either due to bad writing or the person just not being the right fit. So she definitely, for me, helped really kickstart my love of the women's division again, because I did come in kind of at the beginning of the whole thing with the man. So I'm a little bit biased, but I do appreciate it, because it did bring us things like Warrior Wrestling had the War of Attrition, where it was a 8-woman battle for the title, and Tessa Blanchard was in it. And to see AEW talent such as Big Swole and Britt Baker give way to somebody like Taya Valkyrie to go up against Tessa Blanchard was incredible to watch. And it was amazing to watch these women put their bodies on the line and be able to do that. So it's definitely between Brandy and Becky normalizing it, but then I couldn't tell you who from the other promotions, because they all have just kind of put their hearts on their sleeves and their blood on the floor, and try to take it where they can.
Thank you. I don't like answering my own questions, but I feel like if we don't mention one in particular, it just, and that's Gal Kim, for the fact that she has made a very active point of, you look at the Women's Evolution pay-per-view, and they went, oh, this is the first time this has been done. TNA were doing that long before, and TNA had some interesting storyline choices as well, but you look at Gal Kim and what she did with TNA, and then going into now Impact, she's one of the women who really made you notice that there were women in wrestling. So that's, I have to mention her. Thank you all for sitting here. I know I said I thought it would be an hour, and it's gone to like 3+.
Can I add one more female wrestler?
Go on.
I do also want to say, in addition to Brandy that I had mentioned before, I do want to say Rhea Ripley, because from what I understand, this current character that she's doing is her own. Because I know when she first came in, she was the cute, bubbly, long blonde hair when she started with the Mae Young Classic. And then when she was actually signed onto NXT, all of a sudden you see this badass chick coming out in all the chains and the black, and her hair is still gorgeous, but all the long, gorgeous hair is cut off. She's got the half-shaved head. She's got the shaved part of her eyebrows. She's got all of her piercings in. She's got all these beautiful tattoos. I've seen most of them on her Instagram stories and on her Instagram. It's a shame that they're having her cover them up while they let the men show all of their nonsensical tattoos. That's why she has to wear the long pants, because I read an article that they are having her wear those long pants for her gear because of the tattoos that she's got on her legs. I mean, she's got either one or both of her kneecaps tattooed, and I've seen that tattoo, and it's gorgeous. I commend her for sitting through that one, but she just doesn't care, and she does what she wants, and I feel like it's one of the more authentic characters that we have right now for the women on NXT, because she doesn't even care when she's talking to people on Twitter with some of the stuff that she says to people that try to just tear her apart. And because I know that they're not allowed to curse, but on their social media, because they're trying to keep a certain image for their audience and whatever. But she finds a way to tell people to go screw themselves without actually saying it, and I commend her for being able to do that, to have that mental strength to do that. I think she's only 20. I think she's still 23. I think she's turning 24 later on, towards the end of the summer, and I seriously want to be Rhea Ripley when I grow up. I'm 27 in 12 days, and I do not have that mental strength. You go, girl.
I add one more mention too that might deserve an honorable mention. I'm not sure if you guys might agree, but one got in my head that while everyone's talking two, one of them is the one I would mention China, mainly because of the fact that she made because of the whole thing, how she, to me, I think of her too as she was the first person I saw that won first title that was strictly male, with the Intercontinental Champion. I see her as more of a trailblazer. There's her, and then there's one that outed WWE for the less pay than the men, which is AJ Lee. And not only with that, there's her person that was dealing with even reading her book, if I even got it right, that with mental illness as well. So and this is the same reason why I love Brandy. Despite who you're married or anything like that, she don't allow people to give her crap. She just basically be herself, and a nerdy person who's just in love with a crazy thing called wrestling. So I don't know if you guys might feel the same way, that maybe those two deserve the same mention as Brandy as well.
Thank you. Any other notable mentions?
No, I just want to add on to yours about Gail Kim because I watched when I started watching, she was in WWE and then she like quickly left and then came back after doing everything in TNA/Impact, and I actually found out that she dealt with a lot of the stuff we've talked about in here during her stint in WWE, and that's part of the reason she left was like the sexist stereotypes and fetishizing that she like dealt with. And when you mentioned her, I thought that was like super awesome because apparently she like eliminated herself out of a match because they wanted her. Yeah. And I think like that is the most notable thing because she was outspoken kind of before it became the trend to be outspoken, and she just like stood up for what she believed in. I think that's incredible, especially where she doesn't get the credit she's due, and kind of got scrubbed out of the mainstream, especially by WWE.
Yeah.
Especially as I think AEW could really help having a Gail Kim, because Gail Kim is obviously Impact now. She trains a lot of the younger girls. Having that stronger female who's maybe even retired, who just can come in and help perfect some of the AEW girls' craft, I think that would be so helpful for the company.
Like a woman version of a Billy Gunn, who can no longer be called Billy Gunn, so Billy.
Yeah.
And Dusty Rhodes. And I'll also add, please, WWE, bring back the Mae Young Classic. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Why?
I love that they made all those strides and then immediately the next year decided that that was enough and that we should be appeased for the next 20 plus years.
Guess
That's
what,
not how
WWE?
that works.
That's not how that's gonna work.
Like you don't. We're not a dog. You don't give us a treat and we're happy for a while and forget whatever it is. We're people. We have a longer memory than the average now. So I don't know why you thought that we'd forget that was a thing last year.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we're not gonna.
Interesting to see where WWE goes when Vince finally goes away. And please God, don't let Shane take the reins.
You know what?
No, don't give it to Shane.
I heard Shane is actually behind the scenes much, much nicer than he is on screen. I have no idea what that was about him being the best in the world. That was a very strange kind of out of left field thing for him.
But he's always been a douche canoe on TV.
Shane's fine when he's not on TV. I was like, when I saw Shane, I was like, oh, I actually like Shane. And then the best in the world thing happens. Like, why you gotta make me feel different, huh? Why you gotta make me mad at you? I want to like you. Stop making it harder.
Going against my emotions.
Stop playing with my emotions.
But everyone said when he was running SmackDown that he was like the best boss. They loved him. So I would be fine with him continuing to run things as long as he runs things the way he did when he was on SmackDown without his dad in his ear.
Okay, everyone have their points in? Everyone happy?
Yes. Sorry. How dare you make me defend Shane McMahon?
Everyone said everything they want to say. I don't want anyone to leave anything unsaid. Especially WWE.
I think Tamika was saying something I totally talked over her. I'm so sorry for that.
Anything to add?
Oh, no, I think I'm good. If everyone else is.
We've covered a lot in the 3+ hours.
I hope you have enough for your project.
Yeah.
So thank you for all taking part. Thank you for staying with me.